I've always been a bit of a loner, even as a kid. The name's Veronica, and I've got a knack for keeping myself busy. Don't get me wrong, I'm not antisocial or anything. I just prefer my own company most of the time. My mom, bless her heart, recognized my independent streak early on. Instead of trying to change me, she channeled it into something productive. She introduced me to the world of cooking when I was barely tall enough to reach the kitchen counter. I soaked it all up like a sponge. Mom didn't just teach me recipes, she taught me to understand food. We'd go to cafes and restaurants all over town, and she'd break down each dish for me. As I grew older, my fascination with food only intensified. I started reading articles by famous restaurant critics, realizing that food was more than just taste and texture. It was about presentation, ambience, the whole package. One day, I turned to Mom and said, "I want to write about food." She looked at me, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Then you better learn everything there is to know about it, kiddo." And that's exactly what I did. I enrolled in a culinary institute, determined to become a master of the culinary arts. After graduating, I didn't stop there. I took journalism courses, honing my writing skills. I wanted to paint pictures with words, to make people taste the food through my descriptions. My first gig as a restaurant critic was for a small local paper. I wrote about a tiny Italian place, describing the way the homemade pasta melted in my mouth and how the rich aroma of garlic and basil transported me straight to a Tuscan kitchen. To my surprise, people loved it. My editor called me the next day. "Kid, you've got a gift," he said. "Keep this up, and you'll go far." And just like that, I found my calling. I bounced from newspaper to magazine, building a reputation for honest, witty reviews. But the real game changer came when I started my own social media pages. Suddenly, I wasn't just writing for publications. I was connecting directly with food lovers all over the world. My followers grew, hanging on my every word about the latest food trends and hidden gem restaurants. It was just another Tuesday evening. I'd settled into a cozy corner table at the Rustic Spoon, a new farm-to-table joint I was reviewing. As I jotted down notes about the ambience, an elderly couple at the next table caught my eye. The woman was peering at me intently, whispering to her husband. I offered a polite smile, used to being recognized, and turned back to my notepad. "Excuse me," the woman's voice was warm, tinged with excitement. "You're Veronica Miller, aren't you? The food critic?" I nodded. "That's me. Nice to meet you." "Oh, I'm such a fan," she gushed. "I follow all your posts. Would you like to join us for dinner?" I hesitated. Normally, I preferred to dine alone when working. But something about the couple's genuine enthusiasm made me reconsider. As I settled into their table, the woman introduced herself as Martha, her husband as George. "And this is our son, Jack," she added, gesturing to a young man I hadn't noticed before. Jack looked up from his phone, his eyes meeting mine. "Hey," he said, a lopsided grin spreading across his face. "Nice to meet you." We fell into easy conversation. Martha and George were eager to hear about my recent travels, while Jack chimed in with witty comments that had me laughing despite myself. As the evening wore on, I found myself enjoying their company more than I'd expected. Jack, in particular, was easy to talk to. We discovered a shared love for obscure indie films and terrible puns. When it was time to leave, Jack hesitated. "Hey, would it be okay if I got your number? You know, in case I need restaurant recommendations or something." I felt a flutter in my stomach that had nothing to do with the meal I'd just eaten. "Sure," I heard myself say. "For restaurant recommendations." We started texting that very night. At first, it was just about food and restaurants. But soon, we were talking about everything and anything. Our chats became the highlight of my day. A month later, Jack asked me out on a proper date. I said yes without hesitation. Our first date was at a quirky little bistro I'd been meaning to try. As we sat across from each other, I realized how comfortable I felt with him. There was none of the awkwardness I'd come to expect from first dates. A year after we met, Jack proposed. It wasn't a grand, flashy affair, he knew that wasn't my style. Instead, he cooked me dinner, a valiant effort that ended with slightly charred steak and lumpy mashed potatoes, and asked me to marry him over dessert. How could I say no to that? We moved into my apartment after the wedding. We decided to be practical about our finances, creating a joint account for shared expenses. I contributed more, given my higher income, but we both felt it was fair. Living together revealed new sides of Jack. He had a habit of leaving dishes in the sink and his clothes strewn about. His toothpaste tube was perpetually uncapped, and coffee mugs multiplied on every surface. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that I wasn't perfect either. It's just an adjustment period, I told myself. We'll find our rhythm. And slowly, we did. Jack made an effort to tidy up more, and I learned to relax my standards a bit. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. 6 months later, it was time for our first vacation together. As we stood in the airport, luggage in tow, I felt a surge of excitement. I turned to Jack, ready to share my joy, when I noticed his gaze fixed on something behind me. I spun around to see Martha and George approaching us, beaming widely. They carried only small carry-on bags, looking as if they were embarking on a day trip rather than a week-long vacation. "Surprise!" Martha exclaimed, pulling Jack into a hug. "We couldn't let you two lovebirds have all the fun, could we?" I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't part of the plan. I looked at Jack, hoping for some explanation, but he avoided my gaze. "It's, kind of a family tradition," he mumbled. "We always vacation together." I forced a smile, trying to mask my disappointment and frustration. "How nice," I managed to say. "But don't you need more luggage for a week-long trip?" George waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, we'll just pick up what we need there. No point in lugging around heavy suitcases, right?" The first few days of our vacation were a whirlwind. I focused on the positives, the beautiful scenery, the interesting flavor combinations I discovered, the warm hospitality of the locals. But as the days wore on, I couldn't help but notice how freely Martha and George spent money. They shopped like there was no tomorrow, ate at the fanciest places, and never seemed to worry about the bill. One evening, as we sat in yet another overpriced restaurant, I couldn't contain my curiosity any longer. I leaned towards Jack and whispered, "How can your parents afford all this? They're retired, aren't they?" Jack shifted uncomfortably in his seat. They're good with money," he mumbled, suddenly very interested in the menu. I wanted to press further, but Martha chose that moment to launch into a story about her bridge club, effectively ending our private conversation. As our vacation drew to a close, I found myself looking forward to returning home. The day after we returned, I decided to check our joint account, curious to see how much we'd spent. As I logged in, my eyes widened in shock. The balance was much lower than I'd expected, alarmingly so. "Jack, can you come here for a minute?" I called out, my voice tight. I turned the screen towards him. "Care to explain this?" Jack's face paled as he looked at the numbers. "I might have used our account to cover some of Mom and Dad's expenses," he admitted quietly. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the anger bubbling up inside me. "Jack, that was our money. Money that I mostly contributed. You should have discussed this with me first." I know, he said, reaching for my hand. "I'm sorry, Ronnie. It won't happen again, I promise." A month passed, and life slowly returned to normal. Jack kept his word and didn't touch our joint account without discussing it with me first. I tried to put the vacation incident behind us, focusing instead on my work and our life together. One crisp autumn evening, Jack came home with a spark of excitement in his eyes. "Hey, Ronnie," he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind as I stood at the kitchen counter, prepping vegetables for dinner. "I've got an idea. How about we go on an overnight picnic this weekend? Just the two of us, a rented motorhome, and the great outdoors. What do you say?" The idea was appealing. We spent the next few days preparing for our mini adventure. I packed a cooler full of gourmet sandwiches, homemade potato salad, and a bottle of wine. Jack handled the logistics, renting a compact motorhome and mapping out our route. We arrived at the campsite by mid-afternoon. The area was beautiful, surrounded by towering pines and a crystal-clear lake. Jack maneuvered the motorhome into our assigned spot, and we stepped out to enjoy the fresh air. That's when I saw it. A familiar car pulling into the spot next to ours. Martha and George emerged from the car, waving enthusiastically. "Surprise!" Martha called out. "We thought we'd join you for your little getaway." I turned to Jack, hoping to see shock on his face that matched my own. Instead, he looked sheepish, avoiding my gaze. "Jack," I said, my voice low and controlled. "Did you tell them about our trip?" Before Jack could respond, Martha bustled over, pulling me into a tight hug. "Oh, isn't this exciting? A family camping trip." I forced a smile, noticing that once again, they had arrived without any supplies. No tent, no food, not even a change of clothes. As the evening wore on, it became clear that our romantic getaway had turned into a family ordeal. Martha and George dominated the conversation, regaling us with stories of their past camping adventures. They helped themselves to our food and wine, leaving little for Jack and me. When it came time to sleep, another problem arose. Our compact motorhome wasn't designed for 4 adults. And Jack turned to his mother. "You and Dad take the bedroom. Ronnie and I will manage in the car." And so, instead of enjoying a cozy night in our rented motorhome, I found myself uncomfortably curled up in the backseat of our car, with Jack snoring softly in the front. The next morning, bleary-eyed and stiff from our awkward sleeping arrangements, I suggested to Jack that we cut our trip short. The drive home was tense, filled with awkward small talk and long stretches of silence. As soon as we arrived back at our apartment, Jack's parents bid us a cheerful goodbye, seemingly oblivious to the strain their presence had caused. Once they were gone, I turned to Jack. "We need to talk about this," I said firmly. He nodded, looking resigned. "I know. I'm sorry, Ronnie. I should have told you they were coming." "It's not just about that," I sighed. "It's about boundaries, Jack. Your parents can't keep barging into our lives like this. We need to set some ground rules." Jack nodded slowly. "You're right, I'll talk to them." A couple of days after our return, I was in the kitchen testing a new recipe when the doorbell rang. To my surprise, Martha and George were standing there, bright smiles on their faces as if the vacation fiasco had never happened. "Veronica, dear," Martha exclaimed, giving me a quick hug as they bustled in. "We need your expertise. We were wondering if you could tell us which restaurants in the city have the most delicious dishes?" "Well," I said, caught off guard by the question, "there are quite a few excellent places. The French bistro downtown, Le Petit Canard, is fantastic. And Sakura Sushi on 5th Avenue has some of the best sushi I've ever tasted." "Why do you ask?" Martha's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Oh, we thought we'd keep an eye out for any open events at these restaurants. You know, so we can go and eat for free." I turned to Jack, who had just walked into the room, hoping he'd back me up. But he just shrugged and said, "Come on, Ronnie. You've got to accept my parents as they are. No use trying to change them." I was speechless. This was crossing a line, wasn't it? But before I could formulate a response, Martha and George had thanked me profusely and left, chattering excitedly about their plans to score free meals. A few days later, I was preparing for a review of a new upscale Italian restaurant, Bella Notte. As usual, I posted the details of my visit on my social media page, letting my followers know when and where they could expect my next review. The evening of the review arrived, and I settled into my table at Bella Notte, notebook in hand, ready to experience and evaluate the menu. I had just opened the wine list when I heard a familiar voice. "Well, hello there." I looked up to see Martha and George, beaming at me as they sat down at my table without invitation. My heart sank. Martha picked up a menu and announced loudly, "I'm Veronica's mother-in-law, you know. We're here to enjoy the free meal with her." I felt my face grow hot with embarrassment. "Martha," I hissed, "please lower your voice. I'm here to work. You can't just show up like this." But Martha wasn't listening. She raised her voice even more. "Oh, don't be silly, dear. Everyone knows you food critics eat for free. Why shouldn't your family enjoy the perks too? We have every right to be here." I could feel the eyes of nearby diners on us. The head waiter was approaching our table, a concerned look on his face. This was quickly spiraling out of control. "Martha, George," I said, my voice low but firm, "I'm giving you one last warning. If you don't leave right now, I will have no choice but to call security. You are interfering with my work and causing a scene." Martha's face contorted with indignation. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Well, I never," she exclaimed. "Is this how you treat family, Veronica?" As she gathered her purse, she turned to me one last time, her voice dripping with disappointment. "You know, I'm beginning to think I made a terrible mistake. I'm the one who told Jack to marry you. I followed your Facebook page, and I thought, now there's a girl who could help us enjoy the finer things in life. I thought you'd help us eat at fancy restaurants for free, maybe even support us a little. But clearly, I was wrong. If this is how you treat family, well, we're no longer interested in being part of yours." With that parting shot, Martha stormed out of the restaurant, George trailing behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. My hands shaking, I reached for my phone and dialed Jack's number. He picked up on the third ring. "Jack," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "is it true? Did your mother really push you to marry me because she thought I'd provide for them?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Finally, Jack sighed. "Yes," he admitted. "Mom saw your success and thought, well, you know how she is. She insisted you'd be perfect for me, for us." I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. I hung up and turned to the head waiter, who had been hovering nearby. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance," I said. "I won't be able to complete my review tonight. Please extend my apologies to the chef." As I gathered my things, I pulled out my phone once more and quickly typed out an apology to my followers, explaining that due to unforeseen circumstances, my review of Bella Nate would be postponed. The drive home was a blur. My mind was reeling, trying to process everything that had happened. When I walked through our apartment door, Jack was waiting for me, his face etched with worry. "Ronnie," he started, but I held up a hand, silencing him. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "All this time, was I just a meal ticket to your family?" Jack's face crumpled. He reached for my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. "No, Ronnie, no. I mean, yes, that's how it started with my mom's idea, but I fell in love with you. The real you. Not your job or your connections, just you." I sank onto the couch, suddenly feeling exhausted. He sat next to me, his eyes pleading. "I know I've made mistakes. I should have set boundaries with my parents long ago. But Ronnie, I love you. I want to make this work. Can we try to fix this?" I looked at him, really looked at him. Despite everything, I knew I loved him too. As we sat there on the couch, hands intertwined, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could salvage this mess and come out stronger on the other side. The next couple of months passed in relative peace. Jack made efforts to set boundaries with his parents, and I threw myself into my work, trying to rebuild the trust in our relationship. Then came the moment I'd been working towards for years. My cookbook was published. It was more successful than I could have ever imagined. Major newspapers and magazines praised it, and it quickly became a bestseller on all the major online retail sites. One evening, as I was scrolling through yet another glowing review, Jack came home with a surprise. "Let's celebrate your success," he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. I've planned a trip to that charming city you've always wanted to visit. It's got everything you love, amazing restaurants, historical sites, beautiful nature, and I've booked us into that boutique hotel you've been eyeing." I hesitated for a moment, then asked the question that had been nagging at me. "It's just us, right? Your parents aren't coming?" Jack looked me in the eye. "I promise, Ronnie, it's just us. No parents, no surprises." The day of our trip arrived, and we made our way to the train station, luggage in tow. As we approached the platform, I felt my heart sink. There, waving enthusiastically, were Martha and George. I turned to Jack, hoping against hope that this was some cruel coincidence. But the guilty look on his face told me everything I needed to know. "I'm sorry," he muttered, avoiding my gaze. I couldn't not invite them. Mom found out about the trip and... In that moment, something inside me broke. All the promises, all the efforts of the past months, they meant nothing. But I plastered on a smile as Martha and George approached. I noticed they only had a small purse between them. "No luggage?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Martha waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, don't worry about that, dear. You'll take care of everything, won't you? After all, we're celebrating your success." As the announcement for boarding came over the loudspeaker, we made our way onto the train. As everyone settled into their seats, I stood up. "I'm just going to use the restroom before we depart," I said, grabbing my purse that contained my phone and documents. I stepped off the train, the cool air of the platform hitting my face. I stood there, watching as the train's doors closed, as the whistle blew, as it slowly began to pull away from the station. My phone buzzed in my purse, startling me out of my reverie. Jack's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "Ronnie, where are you?" Jack's panicked voice came through. "We're no longer on the same path, Jack," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm divorcing you." I hung up, without waiting for his answer. My hand shook slightly as I opened my banking app and blocked Jack's access to our joint account. Barely a minute passed before my phone rang again. This time, it was Martha. I held the phone away from my ear as she hurled insults and threats, demanding I pay for their trip and compensate them for emotional distress. When she finally paused for breath, I spoke calmly. "Martha, I'm not afraid of your threats or your comments. If you post any slanderous statements, I won't hesitate to take legal action." I blocked her number, then Jack's, and finally George's, for good measure. Taking a deep breath, I called a cab and headed home. The weekend passed in a blur of emotions and practicality. I packed Jack's belongings, contacted a lawyer, and drafted divorce papers. By Monday morning, I felt exhausted but resolute. The sound of a key in the lock made me tense. Jack walked in, looking disheveled and desperate. "Ronnie, please," he began, moving towards me with open arms. I stepped back, gesturing to the suitcases by the door. "Your things are packed. It's time for you to leave." His face crumpled. "You can't mean that. Look, I've learned my lesson. I had a huge fight with my parents on the trip. I told them I wouldn't pay for them anymore. I'm not even speaking to them now. Please, give me another chance." I shook my head, handing him the divorce papers. "It's too late, Jack. This isn't just about your parents. It's about trust, respect, and the life I want to live. We want different things, and that's okay, but I can't do this anymore." After a long moment, he nodded, shoulders slumping in defeat. He picked up his suitcases and walked out, closing the door behind him with a final click. The following weeks were challenging but liberating. The divorce proceedings went smoothly, thanks to my meticulous documentation and Jack's apparent resignation. I threw myself into my work, finding solace in the kitchen and my writing. As the dust settled, I found myself alone again, but it wasn't the loneliness I had feared. I rediscovered the joy in small pleasures, experimenting with new recipes, enjoying quiet evenings with a good book, and connecting with my followers without the shadow of familial expectations. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, sipping a glass of wine and looking out over the city, I couldn't help but smile. Life hadn't turned out as I'd planned, but perhaps it had turned out exactly as it should. I was Veronica again, food critic, author, and most importantly, mistress of my own destiny. I had always been the studious type, loving nature and everything green from a young age. This passion drove me to become an environmental engineer, a job I didn't just do, but lived for. My life was pretty routine until I met Mark at a friend's party. He was charming, a bit shy, and had the warmest smile I'd seen in a long time. We clicked instantly, and before I knew it, we were dating. A couple of months down the line, Mark thought it was time I met his family. I was nervous, but excited too. Little did I know, this was going to be one interesting evening. We drove up to a cozy little house surrounded by a well-kept garden. Mark rang the doorbell, and a woman with a kind face and soft eyes opened the door. This was Laura, Mark's mom. She welcomed us with a hug that felt like it could warm the coldest of days. Come in, come in. I've heard so much about you, Heather. Laura enthused, pulling me into the warmth of the home. As we stepped into the living room, there she was, Julia, lounging on the couch with a look that could freeze hell over. Next to her sat an older man, Ted, who gave me a nod and a faint smile. Julia didn't move, just sized me up with a cold stare. Dinner's almost ready, Laura announced, breaking the tension a little. Why don't you all sit down and chat? I sat next to Mark, who seemed oblivious to the frosty air his sister was giving off. Julia finally spoke, her voice sharp, cutting through the small talk like a knife. So, you're the latest flame, huh? An environmental, what now? Julia's tone was dismissive, her words dripped with a disdain that was hard to miss. Environmental engineer, I corrected gently, trying to keep my voice even. I work with industrial companies to ensure they meet environmental standards. Ted chuckled a little, trying to lighten the mood. Let the girl be, Julia. We need more people looking after the planet. Julia rolled her eyes but shifted her gaze back to her phone, disinterested. Dinner was served, and Laura made sure the conversation steered clear of any icebergs. We talked about the weather, the garden, and Laura's recipes, anything safe and sound. After dinner, Mark and I helped clear the table while Julia disappeared into another room, with Richard following shortly after. Laura leaned in close while we were washing the dishes. Don't mind Julia, she whispered, as if reading my mind. She's always been a bit tough around the edges. You made a great impression, believe me. Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it, I murmured, more reassured but still feeling the sting of Julia's words. On the drive home, Mark was all apologies. I'm really sorry about Julia. She's Julia. Don't take it to heart. I nodded, though part of me wondered just how much of Julia's hostility I'd have to endure. But looking over at Mark, with his earnest blue eyes full of apology, I decided some battles were worth fighting. It had been a whirlwind year with Mark. Despite the bumps, mostly caused by his sister Julia, our relationship had deepened into something I couldn't imagine being without. But just as we started planning our future together, tragedy struck. Julia's husband, Ted, passed away unexpectedly. The funeral was a grand, gloomy affair. Julia, veiled and somber, played the part of the grieving widow, to a T. Something about her tears felt off to me, like she was putting on a show. But I bit my tongue, chalking it up to my already strained feelings towards her. A couple of months later, Mark and I decided it was time to move forward with our own lives. We were planning a simple wedding, nothing extravagant, just an intimate celebration of our love. That's when the drama unfolded. I really think you should wait, Julia burst out during what I had hoped would be a peaceful family dinner at her place. Her eyes were fierce, her voice a sharp edge, cutting through the calm. You can't seriously think of celebrating when I'm still in mourning. It's disrespectful, it's indecent. Mark looked taken aback, his fork halfway to his mouth. Julia, it's been 2 months, and we're only talking about a small. 2 months, she snapped, slamming her palm on the table, making the silverware jitter. My husband is dead. Do you think that feels like 2 months to me? No wedding until a year has passed. That's final. Mark, ever the peacemaker, touched my arm, a silent plea. Heather, maybe we should consider it. It's just a few more months. The atmosphere remained charged, each meeting with Julia a tiptoe around a minefield. Mark remained oblivious to the undercurrents, or perhaps he chose to be, thinking it was the only way to keep peace in the family. A year had slowly passed since the funeral, and Mark and I finally got married. The ceremony was simple, just close friends and family in a little chapel downtown. Mark's mom, Laura, was radiant, brimming with joy for us, but Julia was another story. She was there, physically, but her smiles were forced, her eyes distant. I figured it was the memories of her late husband that made her so withdrawn. After the wedding, Mark and I settled into a modest rented apartment. It was cozy, filled with the laughter and plans of newlyweds, until reality knocked on our door with the news of Laura's illness. It was sudden and severe. She was bedridden, her limbs weak, and she suffered from excruciating headaches and kidney pain. Without much discussion, Mark suggested, "We should move in with Mom. She needs us." So, we packed up our lives and moved into his childhood home to take care of Laura. It was there that I truly stepped into the role of a caregiver. I bathed her, combed her hair, which was thinning alarmingly, and did my best to keep her comfortable. One day, while trying to untangle her hair, I suggested, "Mark, maybe we should consider a specialized care facility. They could handle her medical needs better." Mark hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know, Heather. Julia is really set on keeping Mom here. Let's try to manage a bit longer." Julia's visits were frequent and usually ended in criticism. One afternoon, she stormed in just as I had finished cleaning the kitchen. "You call this clean? And what's that smell? Can't you cook something decent?" "I'm doing the best I can, Julia. It's not like I have any help," I shot back, frustration bleeding into my voice. Julia snorted. "Excuses. You're just lazy. And poor Mom, stuck with your pathetic cooking and cleaning." Before I could respond, Mark walked in, his face drawn. "Heather, just let it go. It's not worth the argument." His words stung, always quick to defend his sister, never me. As the days turned into weeks, the atmosphere at home grew heavy with unspoken tensions. I found myself dreading Julia's visits, the air thickening the moment she stepped through the door. Her accusations were relentless. "You're neglecting her. Look at her, she's wasting away and you just watch," Julia would hurl at me during her brief, tempestuous visits. And every time, Mark would side with her. "Heather, maybe try a little harder with Mom. Julia might have a point," he'd say, which only poured salt on my open wounds. I felt isolated, caught in a home where my efforts were unseen and unappreciated. Conversations with Mark about it led nowhere, circles of blame that always ended with "my sister is right." 2 months had never passed so slowly. Laura's health continued to decline, despite my best efforts, and then, one grim morning, she passed away. The house plunged into a deeper silence than the morning we had already been living under. Mark was devastated, his mother had been his anchor, and now that she was gone, he seemed adrift, lost in his grief. The funeral was a blur of black attire and whispered condolences. I stood beside Mark, offering what comfort I could, but the real storm brewed when Julia approached us by the graveside, her face twisted not just with grief, but anger. "You should have done more," she hissed quietly, ensuring only I could hear. "If you cared half as much about her as you do about your damn plants, she'd still be here." I felt a sting at her words, anger mingling with my sorrow. "Julia, Laura needed professional care, not just us." "I told you." "Excuses," she snapped back, her voice sharp as a knife. "You just didn't want to deal with the burden." I glanced at Mark, hoping for support, but his eyes were fixed on the freshly turned earth. Later, at home, I tried to speak to him. "Mark, you heard what your sister said. You know it's not true. You need to talk to her, make her understand." Mark rubbed his temples, the weight of his world etched deeply across his brow. Heather, Julia's all I have left now. She's hurting. Don't stir things up. I can't handle more drama. The following day, as I was cleaning out Laura's desk, a sheaf of medical documents caught my eye. Curiosity piqued, I began reading. The records showed that just a year ago, Laura was in remarkable health for her age. Yet, within a year, her body had succumbed to multiple organ failures. It was unsettling. That evening, I brought it up with Mark. Did you know your mom was completely healthy a year ago? And now, suddenly, all her organs just failed? Mark didn't look up from his paper. Yeah, so? It happens, Heather. People get sick. But doesn't it seem weird to you? Your sister's husband, didn't he die of something similar? I pressed, hoping he'd see the connection. Mark sighed, his patience wearing thin. Ted had his own issues, Heather. He was older, and these things are common enough at his age. But both of them complained about losing hair before they got seriously ill. Doesn't that strike you as odd? I couldn't keep the frustration from my voice. Mark slammed his paper down, glaring at me. You're starting to sound paranoid, Heather. Just stop, all right? This isn't some mystery novel. This is real life, and in real life, people get sick and die without it being a plot. I recoiled, stung by his harsh words. I'm just worried, Mark. There's a pattern here that we can't ignore. Enough, Heather. His voice boomed, echoing off the walls. My sister's right. You're just trying to find blame because you feel guilty. Just stop with these crazy theories. I stood there, words failing me as I watched him storm out of the room. His dismissal of my concerns hurt, but it also set a resolve within me. Something was wrong, and I couldn't let it go, no matter how much it upset Mark. It started with a simple, terrifying moment. I woke up early one morning feeling something wasn't quite right. Running my hands through my hair as I often did while planning my day, I froze. Clumps of hair came away in my hands, not just strands, but whole locks. Panic surged through me as I stared at them, the reality setting in with cold clarity. Scared and unsure, I arranged for a blood test at the company lab first thing. As an environmental engineer, I knew a bit about what symptoms to flag, but nothing prepared me for the results. Traces of thallium, a heavy metal poison, were found in my bloodstream. My mind raced with the implications. Someone had poisoned me, but who? Barely holding back my fear, I approached Mark with the results later that day. Mark, look at this, I said, handing him the lab report. There's thallium in my blood. This isn't an accident. Someone's doing this. Mark's face transformed from concern to disbelief, and then to something darker. Thallium? Heather, this is insane. Are you suggesting someone in the family? Yes, I think someone is trying to poison me. I interrupted, desperate for him to understand. And I'm not the first. Remember your mom? Remember Ted? He shook his head, stepping back as if my words physically pushed him. You're losing it, Heather. You're seeing conspiracies where there are none. It's like you're obsessed. As we argued, voices raised and fraught with tension, Julia walked in. The timing couldn't have been worse. She caught the tail end of our conversation, her eyes narrowing as she pieced together the scene. Heather, aren't you working in a lab? With access to all sorts of chemicals? Julia's voice was cold, calculated. Maybe you brought home some of your work. Maybe you're the one poisoning people. I stared at her, aghast. What? No. I'm being poisoned, Julia. Why would I do that to myself? Mark turned to look at me, his expression hardening. I can't do this anymore, Heather. I can't trust you. You're talking about poisoning, and all I see is paranoia. I want a divorce. The words hit me like a blow. Mark, you can't mean that. We need to figure this out together. But he was already walking away, his decision made. Julia's smirk was like a victory lap. You heard him, Heather. Pack your stuff and get out. We don't need more of your drama here. Broken, I returned to our room, my hands trembling as I packed. Each folded shirt, each photo placed back into boxes, felt like erasing a part of my life. With every item, I felt more isolated, more abandoned. By evening, my car was loaded with the last of my things. I looked back at the house, a place that had been my home, filled with dreams and then nightmares. The weight of what I was leaving behind, and the fear of the unknown ahead, pressed down on me. I settled into a small apartment near my workplace. As I unpacked my few belongings, the need for answers burned fiercer than ever. I spread out all the information I had, lab results, medical records, conversations, all pointing to one chilling conclusion. Julia had poisoned her husband, then her mother, and attempted the same with me. Determined to see this through, I contacted a private investigator, someone with a solid reputation for digging deep without causing a stir. I met him at a dimly lit coffee shop downtown, where I handed over all the evidence I'd gathered. I need to know everything about her recent activities, financial status, everything, I told him, my voice low but firm. The PI, a grizzled man with keen eyes, nodded slowly. I'll get on it. This looks serious, and if your suspicions are correct, you're dealing with a dangerous individual. 2 tense weeks passed before I heard back from him. We met again in the same coffee shop, where he laid out his findings before me. Your sister-in-law is in deep water, he began, his tone grave. She's burned through all the cash from her late husband's estate, and now she's drowning in debt. I leaned forward, my hands clenched tightly around my coffee cup. Is there any chance she's targeting her brother next? For financial gain? He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. It's possible. People like her, they don't stop until they get what they want. She's a classic psychopath, no remorse, just objectives. The PI then slid a folder across the table to me. I'd advise you to take this to the police. She's dangerous, and this is bigger than just a family dispute. I nodded, absorbing his advice. But something within me resisted the idea of stepping back. Thank you, I'll consider it. But first, I need to try to handle this in my own way. I need to expose her, make her face her actions. Fueled by the need to protect not just myself, but also Mark, despite his current feelings toward me, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and dialed Mark's number, my heart pounding as it rang. Mark, it's Heather. We need to talk. It's important, I said as soon as he answered, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause, a hesitation, then a heavy sigh. All right, Heather. Come over tomorrow morning. We'll talk then. Hanging up, I felt a mix of relief and impending dread. This was my chance, maybe my last, to set things right, or at least to try. The next day, I drove back to the house, the familiar route now laden with a mix of nostalgia and bitter anticipation. I parked outside, taking a moment in the quiet of my car to gather my thoughts. With one last look in the rearview mirror, I stepped out of the car and walked towards the house, each step heavy with the weight of the impending confrontation. Stepping into Mark's house felt surreal, like walking onto the set of a tragic play where I once knew my lines, but had since forgotten them. The air was thick with tension and the summer heat, making each breath feel heavier than the last. Mark gestured towards the kitchen table where a pitcher of lemonade sat, condensation beating along its glassy exterior. It's hot out there, huh? Here, have some lemonade before we get into it, Mark said, pouring a glass and sliding it across to me. Thanks, I murmured, taking the glass. The icy drink was refreshing, momentarily pushing the impending confrontation to the back of my mind. I took a few sips, relishing the coolness. But within minutes, a sharp pain twisted in my stomach, gripping and unrelenting. I gasped, setting the glass down with a clatter. Mark, something's not right. My stomach, it hurts so much. Mark, confused and concerned, came over to my side. What's wrong? Where did this lemonade come from? I managed to ask, clutching my abdomen as the room began to spin. Julia made it before she went out, Mark replied, his brow furrowing. Heather, what's happening? I tried to steady my voice, the room tilting dangerously. Mark, the lemonade, it's poisoned. Your sister, she's trying to kill us. For the inheritance. We need to call 911, now. I collapsed onto the floor, the cold tiles a harsh contrast to the heat that flushed my face. At that moment, the front door swung open and Julia walked in, her timing as impeccable and sinister as ever. She froze, taking in the scene, me on the floor and Mark by my side, phone in hand. What's this now? Heather, what drama are you cooking up? Julia's voice was sharp, cutting through the thick air. Mark, conflicted yet urgent, ignored her. I'm calling for an ambulance. Something's wrong with Heather. Julia laughed, a cold, harrowing sound. Oh, please. She's just acting. Look at her, always the victim. I tried to speak, to warn Mark again, but my voice was a mere whisper, drowned out by Julia's accusations. She's lying, Mark. She's trying to set me up. Don't fall for it. Mark hesitated, his phone hovering. That moment of doubt was all Julia needed. As he turned to grab a cold towel compress from the kitchen to help me, Julia leaned close, her voice a venomous hiss only I could hear. It's over for you. In a few hours, you'll be gone, and then it's his turn. All this, everything, he'll be gone too, and I'll be the only one left. Her words were the last I heard. I woke up in the hospital, the sterile white of the room blinding after days lost in darkness. My throat was parched, my body ached, but I was alive. As I was trying to piece together how I ended up here, the door to my room creaked open and 2 police officers walked in. Their faces were stern but not unkind as they approached my bedside. Mrs. Thompson, you're awake. We're glad to see you're recovering, one of the officers began. We're here because your private detective contacted us. He filled us in on everything. I nodded, my mind still foggy. Yes, the detective. I hired him to investigate my sister-in-law. The other officer pulled up a chair. He did a thorough job, ma'am. Based on his information, we arrested your sister-in-law. We also exhumed the bodies of her husband and your mother-in-law. Tests confirmed they were poisoned with thallium, just like what was found in your system. The room spun a little with each word. Julia did that? My voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, and she tried to prevent your husband from calling the ambulance. But he did call, and that probably saved your life, the first officer explained. Their words sank in slowly. Mark had called the ambulance. Despite everything, he had saved me in the end. Your sister-in-law is facing charges for double premeditated murder and attempted murder, the second officer continued. She's in custody now and won't be harming anyone else. The relief was palpable, but it was overshadowed by the betrayal and the horror of what had transpired. It was only when the officers left, wishing me a swift recovery, that the tears came, tears for the life I thought I had, for the family I thought was mine. Weeks later, Mark visited. I was stronger then, sitting up in bed, the poison flushed from my system, but not from my mind. He looked worn, the guilt etching deep lines around his eyes. Heather, I can't express how sorry I am. I should have believed you, he stammered, unable to meet my eyes. It's too late for sorry, Mark. Your sister nearly killed me, and for a long time, you chose to believe her over your wife, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion I felt. I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. But she confessed, Heather. At the trial, she admitted to everything, even gloated about it. She said she'd have killed me too if it weren't for you. I absorbed his words, the final pieces of Julia's treachery slotting into place. And now? I asked, my heart thudding heavily. She's been sentenced to life in prison. And there's a compensation order. She has to pay for all your medical expenses, the therapy you'll need, everything. Mark moved closer, his hands reaching out, then pulling back. Heather, can we start over? Can you forgive me? I looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the man I married and the stranger he became. I can't, Mark. You didn't just break my trust, you chose her over me when I was fighting for our lives. I need to heal, and I can't do that with you." Mark nodded, tears in his eyes as he stood to leave. "I'll always love you, Heather. I'm just so sorry it came to this." As he walked out, I felt a weight lift slightly. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a step toward closing a painful chapter. Now, I live alone, my days filled with recovery and reflection. The pain and betrayal sometimes seem like shadows at the edge of my mind, threatening to overwhelm me. But each day, I grow stronger, more determined to rebuild the life that was nearly stolen from me. I'm Tessa Anderson, and from my earliest memories, I knew I was different from everyone else in our prestigious antique business dynasty. My parents, Robert and Eleanor Anderson, ran a network of antique shops and restoration workshops that had been in our family for generations, passed down from my great-great-grandfather. Our house was like a museum, filled with paintings, antique furniture, and what my parents called priceless artifacts. My older sister, Claire, fit perfectly into this world. 6 years my senior, she was everything my parents wanted in a daughter: artistic, cultured, and completely devoted to the family business. By age 12, she could already tell a genuine Renaissance painting from a replica, while I struggled to see any difference at all. My mind worked differently. Give me a math problem, and I'd solve it in seconds. Show me a physics equation, and it made perfect sense. But art? It might as well have been written in hieroglyphics. "Dad," I tried explaining one evening when I was 14, "I really think I'd be better suited for something else. Maybe business or engineering." He looked at me like I'd suggested becoming a circus performer. "Tess Sandra," he used my full name, which always meant trouble. "This business has been in our family for generations. Your sister understands the importance of tradition. Why do you insist on being so different?" Claire, who was passing by with her sketchbook, couldn't resist adding her 2 cents. "Maybe you're adopted, Tess. I mean, you clearly don't have the Anderson artistic gene." "Claire," Mom scolded, but I could see the slight smile she tried to hide. That hurt more than Claire's actual words. As the years went by, the pressure to conform only grew stronger. Every family dinner turned into a lecture about the importance of art and culture. Every school break meant mandatory internships at our shops, where I felt completely out of place among the antiques and art enthusiasts. I started finding ways to rebel. Small things at first, forgetting my art history assignments, skipping family gallery visits, spending more time in the math lab at school. But my parents' constant disappointment and Claire's perfect daughter act pushed me further. I remember the day I first lit up a cigarette behind the school gym. The act itself wasn't particularly satisfying, but knowing how much it would horrify my health-conscious, image-obsessed family gave me a twisted sense of pleasure. Looking back now, I can see how lost I was. The more they pushed me to be something I wasn't, the more I pushed back. It became a vicious cycle. They'd pressure me about the family business, I'd act out, they'd tighten their control, and I'd find new ways to rebel. I became an expert at forging Dad's signature on school notes. It started when they were called in for another discussion about my behavior. I perfectly mimicked his distinctive handwriting, explaining why he couldn't attend. The irony wasn't lost on me. My one artistic talent was forgery, something that would have horrified my antique-dealing parents if they'd known. My 18th birthday felt less like a celebration of adulthood and more like a countdown to my personal prison sentence. "We've enrolled you in the Art Institute," Dad announced over dinner, sliding the acceptance letter across the table like it was some kind of gift. "You'll study art history and conservation. It's time you got serious about your future in the business." I stared at the letter, my hands shaking. "I already told you, I want to study business analytics at State University." "I got accepted there too." Mom's face hardened. "That's out of the question, Tess Sandra. We won't pay for you to waste your time on numbers." She said it like it was a dirty word. "Your sister's already managing one of our shops," Dad added proudly. "In a few years, you could be doing the same." I stood up so suddenly, my chair fell backward. "I don't want to be like Claire. I don't want anything to do with antiques or art or this whole suffocating business." That night, I packed a bag and walked out. I expected them to come after me, to try to stop me, to at least call. They didn't. Their silence spoke volumes. I was finally free, but I was also completely alone. My friend Sarah let me crash on her couch for a few weeks, then I moved in with Jenny from high school. I picked up whatever jobs I could find, waitressing, retail, data entry. Nothing lasted long, but it was enough to survive. Then I met Mike. He seemed different from the trust fund kids I'd grown up around. He had a regular job in sales, his own apartment, and didn't care about my family drama. When he offered to let me move in after 2 months of dating, I jumped at the chance. 6 months later, I was staring at a positive pregnancy test in his tiny bathroom. My hands were trembling just like they had that night with the Art Institute letter, but for entirely different reasons. "Get rid of it," Mike said flatly when I told him. No discussion, no options. Just 2 cold words. "I want to keep it," I replied, my voice stronger than I felt. "Then you can't stay here." He started packing my things, before I could even process what was happening. I'm not ready to be a father, and I'm definitely not supporting someone else's kid. Suddenly homeless and pregnant, I swallowed my pride and went to my parents' house. Maybe seeing their daughter in genuine need would soften their hearts. "Please," I begged, standing in their immaculate living room while they sat rigidly on their antique sofa. "I just need help with real estate agent courses. I can make a good living, support myself and the baby." "A baby?" Mom interrupted, her face pale. "You're pregnant?" "Who's the father?" Dad demanded. "Mike, he's..." "That sales clerk you were living with?" Mom looked like she might faint. "Absolutely not. We will not have our family name tarnished by an illegitimate child from some nobody. You're not welcome in this house." Dad's voice was ice cold. "Not with that situation. We have a reputation to maintain. What would our clients think?" After my parents' rejection, I found myself sitting on a park bench, one hand on my still flat stomach, wondering what to do next. That's when I remembered, Claire had always been Dad's favorite, but maybe, just maybe, sister to sister, she'd help me. I called her from a payphone near the park. To my surprise, she agreed to meet me at a small cafe downtown. "Claire, I know we've never been close, but I need help," I said, fighting back tears. "I just need enough for the real estate courses, and maybe first month's rent somewhere. I'll pay you back, I swear." She stirred her cappuccino thoughtfully. "Actually, I might be able to help. But Tess, you'll need to help me too." "Anything," I said, relief flooding through me. The next day, Claire met me at her office after hours. She handed me an envelope stuffed with cash, more than I'd expected, and then pulled out a folder. "Just some paperwork," she said casually. "Shipping authorizations, transfer documents, you know how Dad is with his paperwork. He's been so busy lately, and I'm trying to help manage things." "You want me to?" I looked at the blank sheets mixed in with the documents. "Just sign them like Dad would." "Come on, Tess, we both know you're better at his signature than he is." She laughed. "Consider it your last art project for the family." I should have known it was too good to be true. Should have asked more questions. Should have read every document carefully. But when you're pregnant, broke, and your perfect sister finally seems to be on your side, you don't look too closely at the gift horse's teeth. I signed everything she put in front of me. Document after document, blank page after blank page, Dad's signature flowing from my pen in perfect imitation. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Dad, and he was livid. "Get to the house, now." His voice was trembling with rage. Walking into that house felt like entering a lion's den. Dad was pacing the living room, his face purple with anger. Mom sat rigid in her chair, while Claire stood by the fireplace. Her face was a perfect mask of innocence. "You ungrateful little thief," Dad exploded the moment I walked in. "Wasn't it enough to embarrass us with your condition? Now you're stealing from your own family?" "What? I haven't stolen anything," I protested. He thrust some papers in my face, shipping manifests and sales receipts for several valuable paintings from their collection, all bearing his signature. My signature. These paintings were shipped out 2 days ago. Sold to private collectors. He was shaking with rage. I never signed these papers. But someone did. I felt the blood drain from my face as I looked at the documents. They were the same ones Claire had me sign, but now filled out with details of artwork sales I knew nothing about. Dad, wait. You don't understand, I pleaded, my voice shaking. Claire asked me to sign those papers. She said they were just routine documents. The moment the words left my mouth, Claire's mask of innocence transformed into a look of shocked hurt. She was always the better actor between us. How dare you, she gasped. Daddy, I saw her here 2 days ago, sneaking around the house when everyone was at the gallery opening. I thought she was here to apologize to you and Mom, so I didn't say anything, but now. That's a lie, I screamed. I haven't been here in days. Claire gave me those papers to sign, she set me up. Dad's face hardened even further. Enough. First you shame this family with your pregnancy, and now you try to blame your sister for your crimes? Claire has dedicated her life to this business. She would never. But I'm telling the truth. I was crying now, my hands protectively covering my stomach. Please, Dad, just listen. I've heard enough, he cut me off, his voice ice cold. You are no longer my daughter. I'm removing you from my will, and I want you to stay away from this family. You're dead to us. Mom just sat there, silent tears running down her face, while Claire played the role of devastated sister perfectly. Within hours, the phone call started. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all calling to express their disgust with my behavior. Claire had apparently been busy, spreading the story of my theft through the family grapevine. I can't believe you would do this to your own parents, Aunt Margaret's voicemail said. Don't even think about coming to Sunday dinner anymore. We always knew that girl would turn out bad, I overheard Uncle James telling my cousin. Stay away from her, she's nothing but a thief and a liar. The stress was overwhelming. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time my phone rang, it was another relative calling to disown me. Each message was another nail in the coffin of my former life. 3 days after the confrontation, the cramping started. Sharp, terrible pains that had me doubled over. Then the blood came. I called an ambulance from my cheap motel room, but I already knew. By the time I reached the hospital, I had lost everything, my family, my reputation, and now my baby. The doctor said it was likely caused by extreme stress and anxiety. After being released from the hospital, I spent weeks barely existing. But one morning, I woke up and saw Claire's face smirking at me in my dreams, and something inside me snapped. They wanted me to fail? Fine. I'd show them just how wrong they were about me. I found New Beginnings, a women's support organization, through a flyer at a local coffee shop. Walking into their office was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, admitting I needed help went against everything my proud family had taught me. But Sandra, my caseworker, didn't see a failure or a disappointment when she looked at me. She saw potential. You're good with numbers, you say, she asked during our first meeting. And you understand property values? Have you considered real estate? That conversation changed everything. The organization helped me enroll in real estate courses, provided a small stipend for basic needs, and even helped me find temporary housing in their women's shelter. All those years of analyzing property values in my head while my parents dragged me through antique shops had given me an instinct for market value. My mathematical mind could calculate mortgage payments and investment returns in seconds. And maybe, growing up watching people haggle over precious artifacts had taught me something about negotiation after all. I got my license in record time and landed a job at Metropolitan Real Estate. My first sale was a small condo, but the commission felt better than any praise my parents had ever given me. The clients, a young couple buying their first home, hugged me after the closing. We didn't think we could afford anything in this neighborhood, they told me. But you made it happen. More deals followed. I had a knack for matching people with properties, for seeing potential where others saw problems. Within 6 months, I was the agency's top performer. The money started flowing in, enough to rent a nice apartment in a secure building, buy professional clothes, and start building my own savings account. I quit smoking, joined a gym, and cut ties with the party crowd I'd hung around with during my rebellion years. My life was finally my own, and I was making it count. That's how I met James. He came in looking for commercial property for his tech startup. The moment he walked into my office, I knew this client was different. He didn't care about my family connections or social status. He was impressed by my knowledge of commercial real estate trends and my ability to crunch numbers on the fly. You know, he said after our third property viewing, we could discuss the rest of these listings over dinner. Our first date turned into weekly dates. He introduced me to his family, warm, unpretentious people who cared more about character than pedigree. His mother hugged me the first time we met, and his father actually listened when I talked about market analysis and investment strategies. A year later, James proposed. We had a small ceremony in his parents' backyard. No fancy church, no society photographers, no elaborate reception. Just us, his family, and a few close friends I'd made along the way. His mother helped me pick out a simple white dress, and his sisters decorated the garden with fairy lights. For the first time since losing my baby, I felt like I belonged somewhere. James wasn't just supportive of my career, he was my biggest champion. When I mentioned wanting to start my own agency, he didn't hesitate. You've got the talent and the client base, he said, looking over my business plan. Let me help with the startup costs. Consider it an investment in our future. Tessa Anderson Real Estate opened its doors 6 months after our wedding. But even as I was cutting the ribbon at our grand opening, I knew something was missing. I want to get my business degree, I told James over dinner that night. I'm doing well on instinct and experience, but I need the formal education to take this to the next level. He smiled. I was wondering when you'd decide to do that. You know, Mom and Dad had an argument about how long it would be before you talked about college. That was another blessing in my life, my in-laws. Sunday dinners at their house became a tradition. James's mom taught me her secret recipes, his dad offered business advice, and his siblings treated me like I'd always been part of the family. No one judged me for not knowing about art or antiques. No one compared me to anyone else. I managed to balance running the agency, attending classes, and family time. My grades were excellent. Turns out when you're studying something you actually love, learning comes naturally. The business concepts I'd always understood intuitively finally had names and frameworks. Then one morning, as I was getting ready for class, a familiar name on the morning news caught my attention: major scandal in art world, prestigious antique dealer accused of selling forgeries. The headline screamed about Asian-made copies being sold as originals through a respected family business. I sat in my office, staring at the news on my computer screen in disbelief. My father, who'd disowned me for allegedly damaging the family reputation, was now at the center of the biggest art fraud scandal in years. My phone rang. Unknown number. Tessa? My mother's voice was barely recognizable. Please don't hang up. What do you want? My voice was steady, surprisingly calm. It was Claire, she sobbed. All these years, she's been running a forgery operation through our shops. Those paintings you were accused of stealing? They were fake she needed to get rid of. The real ones had been sold months before. She's been doing this for years. The auction house's authentication process exposed everything. I leaned back in my chair, letting the irony wash over me. We're facing multiple lawsuits, she continued. Millions in damages. Our reputation, everything we built. Tessa, we need your help. We know you're successful now, and James's family has resources. Please, we need money for lawyers. You want my help? I said into the phone, my voice ice cold. Fine. Here's my price, I want a public apology. Not just from you and Dad, from everyone. Every single relative who called me a thief, who spread rumors about me, who turned their backs when I needed them most. And I want Claire to confess what she did to me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "I'll see what I can do," my mother finally whispered. A week later, a video appeared in my email. It was filmed during our annual family Thanksgiving gathering, an event I hadn't attended in years. The familiar dining room was packed with relatives, and there, standing at the head of the table, was Claire. "I need to confess something," my sister's voice trembled. "Years ago, when Tessa was accused of stealing those paintings, it was me. I set her up. I made her sign documents when she came to me for help, then used them to cover up my own crimes. Tessa was innocent." The video continued as, one by one, my relatives stood up to apologize. Aunt Margaret, tears streaming down her face, admitted she should have known better than to believe the worst about me. Uncle James expressed his shame at how quickly he'd condemned me. Cousins I'd grown up with acknowledged their role in ostracizing me. My father spoke last, looking older than I remembered. "We failed you, Tessa. We chose to believe the worst about you because it was easier than admitting we might be wrong about who you were. We pushed you away when you needed us most, and because of our actions, you lost." His voice broke. "You lost your child. Your mother and I will carry that guilt forever." I sat in my home office, watching the video 3 times before opening my social media account. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I began typing. "To my extended family, thank you for your apologies. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong, and I appreciate that you finally found that courage. I accept your apologies and am grateful for the truth finally coming to light." I hit post, took a deep breath, and started typing again. "However, to my immediate family, while I acknowledge your apologies, I cannot and will not help you with your current legal troubles. Years ago, when I came to you pregnant, alone, and desperate, you chose your reputation over your daughter. Your actions and rejection led to the loss of my unborn child, a pain I live with every day. The only assistance I will offer is the contact information for a competent lawyer. What you do with that information is up to you." I attached the lawyer's business card to the post and hit send. Then, methodically, I began blocking numbers, my parents, Claire, their business lines. I blocked their social media accounts, their email addresses, every possible way they had to reach me. The trial of Claire Anderson became one of the biggest art fraud cases in recent history. I didn't attend any of the proceedings, but I followed the news coverage from the comfort of my office. Each revelation was more shocking than the last. The scheme had been running for nearly a decade, with hundreds of forged paintings sold to unsuspecting collectors worldwide. My sister, the perfect daughter, the artistic prodigy, was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The evidence was overwhelming: offshore accounts, correspondence with forgers in Asia, detailed records of every fake she'd passed off as authentic. The prosecutors called it one of the most sophisticated art fraud operations they'd ever seen. The civil suits that followed were devastating. My parents had to sell everything: the shops, the workshops, their house, even Mom's precious jewelry collection. The Anderson family name, once synonymous with artistic excellence and integrity, became a cautionary tale in the antique world. Last I heard, they'd moved into a small apartment and still owed millions to angry collectors. I was 8 months pregnant now, and this time everything was different. No stress, no fear, no desperate pleas for help. Instead, I had a loving husband who attended every doctor's appointment, in-laws who were already arguing over who would host the baby shower, and a successful business that practically ran itself thanks to the amazing team I'd built. My real estate agency had expanded to 3 locations, and we were known as one of the most reliable firms in the city. Every time I walked into one of my offices, seeing my name, Tessa Anderson, on the door, filled me with pride. I'd built this on my own terms, using the skills my parents had dismissed as worthless. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd pushed me so hard to join their business, claiming it was the only path to success. Now their precious empire was in ruins, while I was thriving in the field they'd sneered at. My final semester of college was interesting, to say the least. Waddling into classes with my enormous belly, laptop balanced precariously on what was left of my lap. But I was determined to finish before the baby came. My professors were amazingly supportive, and my grades hadn't slipped despite the pregnancy. Looking back now, I don't regret refusing to help them. Some might call it cruel, but I call it justice. They'd chosen their golden child over me, and that choice had cost them everything. Meanwhile, I'd built my own success story, created my own family, found my own happiness. The baby kicks, and I smile, thinking about the future. My child will grow up in a home filled with love and acceptance, surrounded by people who value them for who they are, not who they're expected to be. They'll never know the pain of being the family disappointment, never feel the pressure to be someone they're not. Tomorrow, I'll graduate with my business degree. James and his family will be there, cheering embarrassingly loud when I waddle across the stage. My massive belly might make it a bit awkward to get my diploma, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Sometimes I think about that scared, pregnant girl who left home with nothing but a broken heart and a forged signature. She couldn't have imagined this future: successful businesswoman, beloved wife, soon-to-be mother, college graduate. But she knew one thing: she was stronger than they thought. And she was right. I'm Robin, 32 years old, and I've been in the event planning game for 9 years now. Weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, engagements, you name it, I've organized it. Funny how life turns out. I studied economics in college, but got hooked on planning events during my time there. Turns out, I had a knack for it. So much so that I decided to make it my career. Over the years, I've built up quite a reputation. My calendar's always packed with clients, which is great for business, but not so much for my personal life. Not that I'm complaining, I love what I do. So there I was, sitting in my office, hashing out details for the Johnson family's company anniversary. 30 years in business, that's something to celebrate, right? I was deep in conversation with Mr. Johnson about centerpieces when my phone buzzed. It was my sister, Kate. "Robin, you need to come to Mom and Dad's." "Now," she said, her voice all urgent. "It's important." I sighed, looking at the mountain of work on my desk. "Fine, I'll be there in an hour." As I drove to my parents' house, I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. Family gatherings were never my favorite thing. Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but there's always been this tension. See, Kate's 8 years younger than me, and she's always been the golden child. Mom and Dad doted on her, while I was left to fend for myself. When I went to college, they couldn't find the money to help me out. My grandmother stepped in, bless her soul. But a few years later, they had no problem footing the bill for Kate's education and a fancy apartment. I tried not to let it get to me, but it stung. Over the years, I'd learned to keep my distance. It was easier that way. I pulled up to the house and took a deep breath before knocking. Mom answered the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Robin, honey, come in. Everyone's in the living room." I walked in to find Dad and Kate sitting on the couch. Kate jumped up, practically bouncing with excitement. I raised an eyebrow. "What's the big emergency?" Kate clapped her hands together. "Well, I have a surprise. But first, promise me you'll help, okay?" I looked at Mom and Dad, who were both smiling encouragingly. Against my better judgment, I nodded. "Okay, I promise. Now what's going on?" Just as I was about to press Kate for more details, the front door opened. In walked a guy who looked a bit younger than me, all smiles and charm. Kate bounced over to him, linking her arm through his. "Robin, this is Mark, my fiancé." I blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, nice to meet you, Mark." We shook hands, and I turned back to Kate. "So, this is the big news? You're engaged?" Kate nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, and that's why I called you here." I want you to plan our engagement party. I felt my stomach drop. Kate, I appreciate the thought, but I'm swamped with clients right now. I don't think. Dad cut me off. Now, Robin, this is your sister we're talking about. Surely you can make time for family instead of strangers. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to remind him how little time they'd made for me over the years. Mom chimed in, her voice sickeningly sweet. Honey, it's your duty as a sister. Kate deserves the best, doesn't she? I looked at Kate, who was practically vibrating with excitement. It has to be perfect, Robin. I mean, I deserve the best, right? I felt trapped. Every instinct told me to say no, to stand my ground. But years of family dynamics kicked in, and I heard myself agreeing. Great, Kate clapped her hands. And of course, you'll do it for free. That's not a problem, is it? I froze. Free? Kate, even for family, there are costs involved. Oh, don't be silly. Kate laughed. You're doing this as my sister. We'll cover the actual expenses, of course, but your services are a gift, right? I looked at Mom and Dad, hoping for some support, but they just nodded along with Kate. I felt like I was drowning. Fine, I said, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. I'll plan the party for free, but you and Mark will need to cover all other expenses. Deal? Kate squealed and hugged me tight. Deal. Oh, Robin, you're the best. As I drove home, my mind was racing. I'd just committed to planning a free event for my sister, potentially losing paying clients in the process. The Johnsons' anniversary was the first casualty. I called them as soon as I got home. Mr. Johnson? It's Robin. I'm so sorry, but something's come up with my family, and I won't be able to plan your anniversary party after all. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, I see. Well, these things happen, I suppose. I could hear the disappointment in his voice, and it made me feel even worse. I have a colleague who's excellent at event planning. I'd be happy to pass along her contact information if you'd like. Mr. Johnson agreed, and I sent over my friend Sarah's details. As I hung up, I couldn't help but feel like I was watching my hard-earned reputation slip away. All because I couldn't say no to my family. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of planning and phone calls. I threw myself into organizing Kate's engagement party with the same dedication I gave to all my events. Maybe even more, if I'm being honest. There was a part of me that wanted to prove something, to my family, to Kate, to myself. I was determined to make this the most spectacular engagement party ever. I started by booking the Riverside, an upscale restaurant with a stunning view of the city skyline. It wasn't easy to get a reservation on such short notice, but I pulled some strings. The owner, Samantha, was an old client of mine. Next came the menu. I spent hours on the phone with the chef, discussing options. We need something impressive, but not stuffy, I explained. Think elegant comfort food. The DJ was a no-brainer. I called up Mike, my go-to guy for all my events. Hey, Mike. Got a special one for you. My sister's engagement party. With the big items taken care of, I called Kate to give her an update and discuss payment. Oh, it all sounds wonderful, she gushed. You really are the best at this, Robin. Thanks, I said, trying to keep the pride out of my voice. So, about the deposits. Oh, right, Kate interrupted. Can we do that later? Mark and I are a bit tied up with some other expenses right now. But I promise we'll pay for everything before the party. Cross my heart. I hesitated. It wasn't how I usually did business, but this was my sister. All right, Kate, I trust you. After hanging up, I made some more calls. To the florist, the decorators, the rental company for the extra chairs and tables. Each time, I found myself saying the same thing. The payment will be a little delayed, but I guarantee it'll come through before the event. You know I'm good for it. And each time, they agreed. After all, we had history. They trusted me. I just hoped I wasn't making a huge mistake. As the days passed, more client calls came in. Good offers, too. The sort that would have paid my rent for months. But each time, I had to turn them down. As the engagement party date loomed closer, I finally sat down to tally up all the expenses. My desk was cluttered with receipts and invoices, flowers, catering, decorations, venue rental, and more. I meticulously entered each item into a spreadsheet, watching the total climb higher and higher. When I finished, I stared at the screen in disbelief. The final amount was just over $13,000. It was more than I'd anticipated, but that's what happens when you're told to spare no expense for the perfect engagement party. I took a deep breath and composed an email to Kate, attaching the detailed invoice. "Hey sis," I wrote, trying to keep it light, "here's the breakdown of expenses for your engagement party. Let me know if you have any questions." That evening, my phone rang. It was Kate. "Hey, what's up?" I answered, expecting her to have questions about the invoice. "Robin, why are you sending me bills?" Kate's voice was sickeningly sweet, with an undercurrent of annoyance. I frowned. "What do you mean? It's the invoice for the engagement party expenses, just like we agreed." There was a pause, then Kate let out a laugh that sent chills down my spine. "Oh, Robin, you can't seriously expect Mark and me to pay for all this, can you?" My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "Kate, you promised you'd cover all the expenses. I've got vendors waiting to be paid." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Kate scoffed. "You make plenty of money with your little party planning business. Surely you can afford to treat your only sister to a nice engagement party?" I was speechless. This couldn't be happening. "Kate, listen to me, I have people waiting to be paid. People who trusted me. You promised." "Well, I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding," Kate said, not sounding sorry at all. "But Mark and I simply can't afford this right now. You'll have to figure something out." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at my phone in disbelief, then immediately tried to call her back. It went straight to voicemail. Panic rising in my chest, I dialed my parents' number. Mom picked up on the third ring. "Robin? Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, we have a problem. Kate is refusing to pay for her engagement party expenses. Can you please talk to her?" There was a long pause. "Oh, honey," Mom finally said, her voice full of disappointment. "Why are you trying to charge your sister for her own engagement party? That's not very nice of you." I felt like I was losing my mind. "Mom, that was the agreement. I'm doing all the work for free, but Kate and Mark were supposed to cover the actual costs. I have vendors waiting to be paid." "Now, Robin," Dad's voice came on the line. I was on speaker. "You know your sister doesn't have that kind of money. But you're doing well with your business. Surely you can handle this as a gift to Kate." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, it's $13,000. I can't just..." "13,000? Mom gasped. "Robin, how could you spend so much? That's ridiculous. You told me to make it perfect," I shouted, my composure finally breaking. "You said Kate deserved the best." "Don't raise your voice at us, young lady," Dad said sternly. "The fact is, you agreed to do this for your sister. If you've overspent, that's on you. You'll just have to figure it out." The conversation devolved from there. No matter what I said, my parents refused to see reason. In their eyes, I was the villain, the successful older sister, trying to ruin her little sister's special day over money. By the time I hung up, I was shaking with anger and disbelief. I looked at my computer screen, the invoice still open. $13,000. Money I'd promised to people who trusted me. Just then, a notification popped up on my phone. It was from Kate's social media account. With trembling fingers, I tapped the link, and what I saw made my blood boil. There was my sister, beaming at the camera, her post gushing about the upcoming engagement party. "Can't wait for tomorrow," she wrote. We've spent so much to make it perfect. It's going to be amazing. Something inside me snapped. The anger, frustration, and hurt I'd been bottling up for years came rushing to the surface. Before I knew what I was doing, I had my phone in hand, dialing the restaurant. "Samantha, it's Robin," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm sorry, but I need to cancel tomorrow's event. I'll transfer the full payment and cancellation fee to you right away." I made similar calls to all the vendors, the caterer, the florist, the decorators. Each time, I apologized profusely and promised immediate payment. By the time I was done, my savings account was nearly drained, but my professional relationships were intact. The last call I made was to Mike, my DJ friend. "Hey, Mike. I'm so sorry, but tomorrow's event is canceled." "Whoa, what happened? Isn't it your sister's engagement?" I sighed. "It's a long story, I'll fill you in later. For now, consider yourself free tomorrow. I'll still pay your fee, of course." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, a cup of coffee growing cold in front of me. My phone was propped up against the sugar bowl, live streaming Kate's arrival at the restaurant. I watched as she stepped out of a car, Mark by her side, both of them dressed to the nines. Mom and Dad were right behind them, along with Mark's parents and a group of excited-looking guests. Kate was talking animatedly to the camera, gesturing at the restaurant. "Here we are," she chirped. "I can't wait to show you all the amazing decorations. My wonderful sister Robin planned everything." I felt a twinge of guilt, quickly replaced by grim satisfaction as Kate reached for the door. Her smile faltered as it didn't budge. She tried again, then peered through the window. "That's weird," she said, her voice losing its perkiness. "It looks empty?" Then I saw her notice the sign on the door. Even through the small phone screen, I could see the color drain from her face. "Cancelled?" she shrieked, whirling to face my parents. "What does it mean, cancelled?" The livestream devolved into chaos. Kate was near hysterics, Mom was trying to calm her down, and Dad was on his phone, presumably trying to reach me. I sat at my kitchen table, a strange calm settling over me as I watched the chaos unfold on my phone screen. The satisfaction I felt was bittersweet. I'd finally stood up for myself, but at what cost? My phone buzzed. Kate's name flashed on the screen. I took a deep breath and answered. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed, her voice shrill with rage. I kept my voice level. "I cancelled the event that I paid for with my own money. You know, the one you refused to cover despite our agreement?" "How dare you?" Kate sputtered. "You've ruined everything. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "About as embarrassing as being told to foot a $13,000 bill for my sister's party, I imagine," I replied coolly. Kate launched into a tirade of insults and accusations. I let her rant, feeling oddly detached from it all. When she paused for breath, I spoke. "Kate, you didn't respect my work or our agreement. You tried to deceive me. So I made a business decision to cancel an event I couldn't afford to fund myself. It's that simple." "You unbelievable creep," Kate shrieked. "You'll regret this, I swear." I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. For the first time in my life, I felt powerful. 15 minutes later, my phone rang again. Mom and Dad. "Robin Elizabeth," Dad's voice boomed as soon as I answered. "You've humiliated your sister and this entire family. How could you be so selfish?" I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Selfish? That's rich coming from you too." "Watch your tone," Mom chimed in. "We raised you better than this. Your sister is devastated." "And I'm out $13,000, I shot back. "Did you even consider that?" "Oh, please," Dad scoffed. "You're doing well with your business. You could have helped your sister out. That's what family does." I took a deep breath. I was helping. I planned the entire event for free. But I can't just throw away thousands of dollars. "You're just jealous," Mom interrupted. You're jealous of your sister's happiness because you're all alone. So you decided to ruin her special day out of spite. The accusation hit me like a slap. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them away. You know what? I'm done with this conversation. I'm done with all of it. I hung up before they could respond. My hands were shaking as I set down the phone, but I felt a strange sense of liberation. Taking a deep breath, I opened my laptop and composed an email to Kate. Kate, I expect full reimbursement for all expenses incurred for your engagement party. This includes catering, venue rental, decorations, and all other associated costs. The total amount is $13,247.89. I've attached a detailed invoice for your reference. If I don't receive payment within 30 days, I will be forced to pursue legal action to recover these funds. Robin. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing with messages. From Kate. You money-grubbing witch. How dare you threaten me? You'll never see a cent from me. From Mark. Back off, Robin. You're making a big mistake. You have no idea who you're messing with. I stared at the messages, a mix of anger and disbelief washing over me. How had it come to this? How had my own family turned into such strangers? Just as I was considering my next move, my phone rang. It was Aunt Sarah, Mom's sister. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself for more accusations. Robin, what on earth happened today? Aunt Sarah's voice was concerned, not angry. I took a deep breath and told her everything, the agreement with Kate, the last-minute refusal to pay, the cancellation, and the aftermath. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. When I finished, Aunt Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Oh, Robin, I'm so sorry you've been treated this way. You did the right thing, standing up for yourself." I felt tears prick my eyes at her understanding. "Thanks, Aunt Sarah. That means a lot. But there's something odd about all this," she continued. "Mark's family is quite well off. They own a chain of sports nutrition stores and several rental properties in the city. They could easily afford this engagement party." An idea struck me. "Aunt Sarah, do you happen to have their address?" 20 minutes later, I was pulling up to a large house in an upscale neighborhood. My heart was pounding as I rang the doorbell. Mark's mother answered, her expression guarded. "Yes, can I help you?" "Mrs. Johnson? I'm Robin, Kate's sister. I need to talk to you and your husband about what happened today." She hesitated, then nodded, leading me to a spacious living room where Mr. Johnson was waiting. "Please," I said, "I know you probably heard terrible things about me, but I beg you to hear my side of the story." They exchanged a look, then Mr. Johnson gestured for me to continue. I took a deep breath and told them everything, showing them the emails, the invoice, and the threatening messages from Mark and Kate. As I spoke, their expressions changed from skepticism to shock, then to anger, not at me, but at Mark. "We had no idea," Mrs. Johnson said, her voice tight. "Mark told us you demanded an exorbitant fee at the last minute and then cancelled when they couldn't pay." Mr. Johnson's face was dark with fury. "We gave that boy $30,000 for this engagement party. He said it was all taken care of." Mrs. Johnson reached out and took my hand. "Robin, we are so sorry for what you've been through. This is unacceptable behavior." Mr. Johnson was already on his phone, tapping away. "I'm transferring you the full amount you spent, plus an additional $5,000 for your trouble. It's the least we can do." As we talked more, I found myself warming to Mark's parents. They were kind, understanding people who seemed genuinely horrified by their son's actions. When I left their house, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The money had been repaid, but more than that, I felt vindicated. Someone had finally listened to me and believed me. The weeks following the engagement party fiasco were surprisingly quiet. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the distraction. Slowly but surely, I felt like I was regaining my footing, both professionally and personally. One sunny afternoon, I was having coffee with my friend Lisa when she dropped a bombshell. "Did you hear about Kate and Mark?" she asked, her eyes wide with gossip. "Mark's parents cut him off completely. No more allowance, and they're refusing to pay for the wedding. It's all over town." I sat back, stunned. "Wow, I didn't expect that." "That's not all," Lisa continued. "Word is, the wedding's been called off. Kate and Mark can't afford it without his parents' money." As Lisa filled me in on more details, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. There was a small, petty part of me that felt vindicated, karma had finally caught up with them. But mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the mess this had all become, sad for the relationships that had been irreparably damaged. Over the next few days, I pieced together more of the story from various friends and acquaintances. Mark's parents, true to their word, had taken a hard line on their son's deception. They'd not only refused to fund the wedding but had also cut off his monthly allowance. As for my sister and parents, I heard through the grapevine that they were blaming me for everything. In their eyes, I was the villain who had ruined Kate's perfect life out of jealousy and spite. It hurt, but I wasn't surprised. It was easier for them to point fingers than to accept their own role in this mess. Weeks turned into months, and I had no direct contact with my family. At first, the silence was deafening. I'd catch myself reaching for the phone to call Mom or text Kate, only to remember that those bridges had been burned. But as time passed, I found the silence less oppressive and more peaceful. I focused on rebuilding my business, reaching out to clients I'd had to turn down during the engagement party planning. Many were understanding, and I threw myself into their events with renewed passion and creativity. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the sunset, I reflected on everything that had happened. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest when I thought about my family. But alongside it was a new feeling, strength. I had stood up for myself, refused to be taken advantage of, and come out the other side. Yes, I'd lost my relationship with my sister and parents, at least for now. But I'd gained something invaluable, self-respect. I no longer felt like the family doormat, always giving and never receiving. I was Robin, successful event planner, woman who knew her worth. As for me, I was done being the family scapegoat. I was done apologizing for my success or diminishing myself to make others comfortable. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what it held. I raised my glass to the setting sun, a toast to new beginnings. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain: I was ready to face it head-on my own terms. My name's Jenny, and I've been a cardiologist for over 2 decades now. Life's thrown its fair share of curveballs at me, but I've managed to catch most of them. Well, except for that disaster of a marriage I got myself into. I met Tom when I was fresh out of med school. He was charming, funny, and seemed like the perfect guy to start a family with. My parents, though? They hated him from day one. "Jenny, you're making a mistake," my mom would say, shaking her head. "That man's trouble." But did I listen? I was young and in love, or so I thought. We got married, and for a while, things were good. We had 2 beautiful kids, and I thought we had it all figured out. Then the drinking started. At first, it was just a beer or 2 after work. Then it became a 6-pack. Before I knew it, Tom was stumbling home at 2 a.m., reeking of booze, and God knows what else. "Where the hell have you been?" I'd ask, trying to keep my voice down so I wouldn't wake the kids. "None of your damn business," he'd slur, pushing past me to collapse on the couch. I tried to make it work, I really did. For the kids, you know? But after years of broken promises and drunken rages, I'd had enough. I packed up the kids and left. My parents? They weren't exactly supportive. "You made your bed, Jenny," my dad said coldly when I called to tell them. "Now lie in it." That hurt. But what hurt more was watching them dote on my younger sister, Sarah. She was always their favorite, even when we were kids. 10 years younger than me, Sarah was the baby of the family, and boy, did they spoil her rotten. I remember when I got accepted into med school. I was over the moon, but when I asked my parents for help with tuition, they shut me down. "We're saving that money for Sarah's future," my mom said, not even looking me in the eye. "You'll figure something out, Jenny. You always do." And figure it out I did. My grandparents, bless their hearts, stepped up and helped me out. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So there I was, divorced with 2 kids to support. But you know what? I made it work. I threw myself into my career, worked my ass off, and managed to provide a good life for my kids. Funny thing is, even when I was doing well, my parents still couldn't see past Sarah. She became a teacher, married some hotshot businessman, and suddenly she was the golden child all over again. Life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. I thought I'd seen it all, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened when my parents passed away. I was the one who organized the funeral. Sarah? She was living it up in Hawaii with her businessman husband. Typical. I spent days arranging everything, from the flowers to the catering, all while dealing with my own grief. The day after the funeral, I headed to the notary's office. I wasn't expecting much, given how my parents had always favored Sarah, but what I heard left me speechless. "I'm sorry, Dr. Kirby," the notary said, adjusting his glasses. "But your parents will leave everything to your sister Sarah. You're not mentioned at all." I left the office in a daze. Years of putting up with their criticism, of working my ass off to make them proud, and this was what I got. Nothing. When I finally got hold of Sarah on Skype, her smug face said it all. "Oh, Jenny," she cooed, not even trying to hide her glee. "I'm sure Mom and Dad had their reasons. You understand, don't you?" I wanted to scream, to reach through the screen and shake her. Instead, I just ended the call. After that, our conversations became few and far between. A Merry Christmas here, a Happy Birthday there. That was it. The only time I saw my nephews was through a screen, and even then, what I saw worried me. During one Skype call, I watched in disbelief as Alex demanded ice cream from Sarah. "Mommy, I want ice cream now," he yelled. "Sweetie, it's almost dinner time," Sarah replied weakly. "I don't care. I want it now." To my shock, Sarah got up and fetched him the ice cream. "There you go, darling. Anything for my little prince." I couldn't help myself. "Sarah, don't you think you should set some boundaries?" She rolled her eyes. "Oh, Jenny, not this again. I'm raising my children to be free spirits. I don't want them to have the kind of trauma we had growing up." And just like that, the call ended. Despite all this drama, I managed to carve out a pretty good life for myself. I had a nice apartment in a good neighborhood, my kids were grown and doing well on their own, and I had my faithful companion, Buddy, a little Yorkie who never failed to brighten my day. After a long day at the hospital, there was nothing better than coming home to Buddy's excited yips and wagging tail. We'd curl up on the couch, me with a glass of wine and him with his favorite chew toy, and I'd feel at peace. "It's just you and me against the world, eh, Buddy?" I'd say, scratching behind his ears. Life was good, quiet, but good. I had my work, my dog, my cozy home. I thought I had it all figured out. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when my life got turned upside down. I had just settled on the couch with Buddy, ready to unwind after a grueling 12-hour shift at the hospital. Then came the knock. I opened the door to find Sarah, mascara streaked down her face, with Alex and Timmy in tow. "Jenny, thank God you're home," she blurted out, barging past me. "We need a place to stay." Before I could even process what was happening, the boys had already torn into my living room like a pair of tornadoes. "Whoa, hold on," I said, trying to corral them. "What's going on, Sarah?" She flopped dramatically onto my couch. "I had a fight with Robert. I'm teaching that bastard a lesson. Boys, say hi to your Aunt Jenny." But Alex and Timmy were too busy to acknowledge me. Alex had grabbed my remote and was changing channels at lightning speed, while Timmy had dumped the contents of his backpack all over my freshly vacuumed carpet. "Hey, guys," I tried, raising my voice slightly. "How about we calm down a bit?" Sarah's head snapped up. "Don't you dare yell at my children, Jenny." I blinked, stunned. "I wasn't yelling, I was just—" "Cool it, Aunt Jenny," Alex sneered, not taking his eyes off the TV. "Mom says we can do what we want." I looked at Sarah, expecting her to correct him. Instead, she just shrugged. "They're expressing themselves." Over the next few days, my peaceful apartment transformed into what I can only describe as a war zone. Toys littered every surface. My walls, once a soothing cream, now sported colorful artwork courtesy of Timmy's crayons. One evening, I came home to find my prized floor vase, a gift from a grateful patient, in pieces on the floor. "What happened here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex shrugged. "It was in our way." I looked at Sarah, who was, as usual, glued to her phone. "Sarah, don't you think the boys should apologize?" She barely glanced up. "Jenny, they're just being kids. Stop being so uptight." The final straw came when I heard a crash from the living room, followed by the unmistakable sound of shattering glass. I rushed in to find my TV face down on the floor, and a baseball-sized hole in my window. "That's it," I snapped. "Sarah, we need to talk. Now." I pulled her into the kitchen, away from the boys. "This can't go on. If you're staying here, there need to be rules. I can't have them destroying my home. They need discipline. If you won't provide it, I will." "Don't you dare," Sarah hissed. "You have no right to parent my children. I forbid you from raising your voice at them or making them do anything they don't want to do." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Sarah, they're out of control. They need guidance." "What they need," she cut me off, "is freedom to express themselves without judgment. I won't let you traumatize them like our parents did to us." As she stormed off, I looked around my once peaceful home. Broken items, scattered toys, crayon-covered walls. This wasn't expression. This was chaos. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, they did. It was a Wednesday afternoon, and I was rushing home from the hospital, praying that my apartment was still standing. As I fumbled for my keys, I felt a bony hand grab my arm. "Dr. Kirby," Jenny, Mrs. Johnson, my elderly neighbor, hissed. Her face was red with anger. "We need to talk now." Before I could protest, she was dragging me down the stairs and out the back door of our building. Strewn across the ground beneath my windows was a sea of garbage. Toys, food wrappers, even some of my medical journals. It looked like a landfill had exploded. "Your nephews," Mrs. Johnson spat, "have been throwing things at passers-by. For fun." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "And the noise," she continued, her voice rising. "All day long, it's screaming and shouting and God knows what else. I can't even hear my television." I stood there, mortified. Mrs. Johnson and I had always gotten along so well. She'd even watched Buddy for me when I had to work late. Now, she looked at me like I was public enemy number one. "If this doesn't stop," she said, jabbing a finger at my chest, "I'm calling the authorities." "I mean it, Jenny, this is unacceptable." As soon as Mrs. Johnson went back inside, I stormed up to my apartment. I burst through the door to find Alex and Timmy sprawled on the couch, playing video games. "Both of you, downstairs, now," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "You're going to clean up every single thing you threw out that window. Right now." Alex barely looked up. "But we don't wanna." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. "Listen to me very carefully. If you don't clean up that mess right now, I'm calling the police and telling them exactly what you've been up to. Your choice." Their eyes went wide. For the first time since they'd arrived, they actually looked scared. Without another word, they scrambled off the couch and headed for the door. I supervised as they picked up every scrap of garbage. It took over an hour, but by the end, the area was spotless. As we headed back upstairs, I laid down the law. "If I ever catch you throwing anything out of a window again," I said, "you'll be in serious trouble. Understand?" They nodded silently, looking suitably chastened. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd turned a corner. Then Sarah came home. "What's this I hear about you threatening my children?" she shrieked, slamming the door behind her. I tried to explain about Mrs. Johnson, about the garbage, about the risk of someone getting hurt. But Sarah wasn't having any of it. "You cruel, heartless scum," she spat. "You're just like Mom and Dad, always trying to control everyone. Well, I won't let you traumatize my children like they traumatized us." As she stormed off to comfort Alex and Timmy, who were now crying crocodile tears, I slumped against the wall. How had my quiet, orderly life turned into such a nightmare? That day started like any other in this new, chaotic reality I was living in. Another long shift at the hospital, another dreaded return to what used to be my sanctuary. But as I opened the door, I immediately sensed something was wrong. "Buddy?" I called out, expecting to hear the familiar click of his nails on the hardwood floor. Nothing. I searched every room, my heart racing. "Buddy, here, boy." Still nothing. Panic started to set in. I found Alex and Timmy in the living room, engrossed in their video games as usual. "Have you seen Buddy?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Alex shrugged without looking up. "Oh yeah, that yappy thing was annoying us, so we opened the door and shooed it away." I don't remember exactly what I said next. I know I yelled. I know I cried. The next thing I knew, I was running down the street, calling Buddy's name until my throat was raw. "Buddy, please, boy, where are you?" Tears streamed down my face as I searched. All I could think about was Buddy, scared and alone, possibly hurt, or worse. The thought of him lying somewhere, hit by a car. I couldn't bear it. I was about to call the police when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hello?" I answered, my voice shaking. "Is this Dr. Jenny Kirby?" a kind voice asked. "We're calling from City Animal Shelter. We found a dog that we believe belongs to you. We were able to scan his microchip and get your information." I rushed to the shelter, tears of relief replacing my tears of fear. When I saw Buddy, safe and sound, I scooped him up and held him close, promising him I'd never let anything bad happen to him again. Back at the apartment, I was ready for a showdown. I found Sarah sprawled on the couch, engrossed in her phone as usual. "We need to talk," I said, my voice hard. "Do you have any idea what your boys did today?" "They kicked Buddy out onto the street." "He could have been killed, Sarah." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, relax. It's just a dog." I stared at her, dumbfounded. "Sarah, Buddy is family. Your boys need to be punished for this. And for everything else they've done. This apartment is a disaster, things are broken, it's a mess." "Not my problem," Sarah cut me off, still tapping away at her phone. "It's your apartment, you clean it." I felt something snap inside me. "That's it, I've had enough. You need to get your act together, Sarah. Start parenting your children, or what?" she sneered, finally looking up at me. "You'll kick us out? Go ahead. I'm sure Child Services would love to hear about how you abused your poor, homeless sister and her children." I stood there, speechless. This wasn't my sister. This manipulative, uncaring woman couldn't be the same girl I grew up with. As I watched her turn back to her phone, dismissing me entirely, I realized something had to change. The next morning, I arrived at the hospital early, my mind racing. I hadn't slept well, plagued by thoughts of Buddy's close call and Sarah's indifference. Before my first patient arrived, I decided to make a call I probably should have made weeks ago. I dialed Robert's number, hoping he'd pick up. On the third ring, he answered. "Robert, I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to understand what's going on. Sarah showed up at my door weeks ago, saying you two had a fight. When is she planning to come home? There was a long pause, then a heavy sigh. Jenny, I'm sorry, but Sarah's not coming home. I've filed for divorce. What followed was a litany of revelations that left me reeling. Robert's voice cracked as he poured out the whole sorry tale. She quit her teaching job years ago, Jenny. Said she was too stressed. But she doesn't do anything at home either. The house is a disaster, the kids run wild, and she's always on that damn phone. I closed my eyes, remembering the state of my own apartment. I've noticed, I said quietly. She told me it was my job to support her, Robert continued. Said I should hire a housekeeper, a nanny. That she deserved to enjoy life. And then she started taking these vacations. Alone. Using the money from your parents' will. I thought she just needed some time to herself, you know? But then I found out. Jenny, she was cheating on me. Multiple times, with different men. I felt like I'd been doused with ice water. Oh, Robert, I breathed. I'm so sorry. His voice broke. I did DNA tests on the boys. Thank God they're mine, but I just can't do it anymore, Jenny. I kicked her out. I feel terrible about the boys, but I just couldn't. As Robert's voice faded into quiet sobs, I sat there, stunned. Robert, I said finally, I'm so sorry you've been through all this. Thank you for telling me. After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair, the full weight of the situation hitting me. Sarah wasn't here for a short stay. She wasn't teaching her husband a lesson. She was here because she had nowhere else to go. The realization that this might be a long-term arrangement made my head spin. How was I supposed to handle this? My tiny apartment wasn't meant for 4 people. My orderly life wasn't equipped for the chaos Sarah and her boys brought with them. But as I thought about Alex and Timmy, I felt a pang of sympathy. They were just kids, acting out because they'd never been taught any better. And now their family was falling apart. That evening, I steeled myself for what I knew would be a difficult conversation. I found Sarah lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone as usual. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, my voice firm. I spoke with Robert today. He told me everything. About the divorce, about your affairs, about how you've been living. Sarah shrugged, turning back to her phone. So what? It's true. I'm divorcing that loser, I'm tired of him. I stared at her, dumbfounded. That's all you have to say? Sarah, you've turned your whole life upside down. What about the boys? They'll be fine, she said dismissively. That's what sisters are for, right? You have to help us. The casual way she said it, as if my support was a given, made my blood boil. I don't have to do anything, Sarah. You can't just expect me to pick up the pieces of your life. Oh, come on, she scoffed. It's not like you have anything better to do. No husband, no life outside work. Besides, Mom and Dad left me all that money. I can afford to take some time for myself. The mention of our parents will reopen old wounds. Speaking of that money, Sarah. Where is it? Because from what I can see, you're broke. She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, that? There were just crumbs left anyway. I felt my jaw drop. Crumbs? Sarah, they left you over $300,000. Yeah, and have you seen how expensive vacations are these days? She rolled her eyes as if I was the unreasonable one. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the rage building inside me. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. This ends now. Either you start taking responsibility for your children and find a job, or you need to find somewhere else to live. You have 2 days to start making changes. I'd like to say that conversation was a turning point, that Sarah saw the error of her ways and decided to step up. But life isn't a fairy tale, and my sister, it seemed, was far past the point of redemption. 2 days later, I came home from a particularly grueling shift at the hospital. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Alex and Timmy were sitting on the couch, looking lost and upset. Boys? Where's your mom? I asked, a sense of dread creeping over me. Timmy wordlessly pointed to a note on the coffee table. With shaking hands, I picked it up and read. Jenny, I've decided to take your advice and live my life. I'm still young, and I deserve to be happy. I've met someone who appreciates me for who I am. Since you're so concerned about the boys, you can raise them. You're an old maid anyway, so it's not like you have anything better to do. Sarah. I collapsed onto the sofa, the note crumpling in my fist. The boys watched me warily, fear and confusion in their eyes. I looked at their faces, these two boys who had been nothing but trouble since they arrived, but who were now just scared, abandoned children. My anger at Sarah was overwhelmed by a wave of protectiveness for her sons. With a heavy heart, I picked up the phone and called Robert. Robert, it's Sarah. She's gone. She left the boys here and took off with some guy she met. There was a long pause, then a deep sigh. I'll be right over. Robert arrived within the hour, his face a mix of anger and concern. When he saw Alex and Timmy, his expression softened. He knelt down and opened his arms, and the boys ran to him, finally letting out the tears they'd been holding back. Over the next few weeks, Robert and I worked together to create a stable environment for the boys. He filed for full custody, and I stood as a witness, recounting Sarah's neglectful behavior and eventual abandonment. The judge's decision was swift. Sarah was stripped of her parental rights. Robert became the boys' sole legal guardian. As the dust settled, I found myself in a new role, the fun aunt who actually got to be fun. Robert and I stayed in close contact, and I visited the boys often. Sometimes, I'd take them for weekends at my place, which was now blissfully peaceful and tidy again. The change in Alex and Timmy was remarkable. With Robert's patient guidance and consistent discipline, they transformed from wild, uncontrollable terrors into respectful, well-behaved young men. It wasn't always easy, there were plenty of bumps along the road, but the progress was undeniable. Years passed. Alex, always the dramatic one, discovered a passion for acting. At 15, he landed his first commercial gig. Before long, he was appearing in TV shows, his talent evident to everyone who saw him. I couldn't have been prouder. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Jenny, it's Sarah. I nearly dropped the phone. Sarah, where are you? It's been years. I know. Look, I've been thinking. I want to come see Alex. You know, reconnect. I heard he's doing well in acting. That's great. I'm his mother. Surely I have some rights to what he's earning. And there it was. The real reason for her call. No, Sarah, I said firmly. You were legally stripped of your parental rights. You don't have any rights to Alex's earnings. That money is his, managed by Robert until he's of age. The line went quiet for a moment. Then, well, if that's how it is, I guess I don't need to see those kids after all. Goodbye, Jenny. I sat there for a long time, phone in hand, a mix of emotions swirling through me. Anger at Sarah's audacity. Sadness for the relationship my nephews would never have with their mother. But mostly, I felt relief. Relief that Alex and Timmy were safe, loved, and thriving despite everything. Life settled into a new normal. I threw myself into my work at the hospital, saving lives and making a difference. My own children, now adults themselves, visited often. And of course, there were regular movie nights with Alex and Timmy, who delighted in critiquing Alex's latest performances. Through it all, Buddy remained my constant companion. As I sit here now, scratching behind his ears and reflecting on the tumultuous journey that led us here, I can't help but smile. Life didn't turn out the way I expected, it rarely does. But sitting in my peaceful apartment, with the love of family, both blood and chosen, surrounding me, I realize I wouldn't have it any other way.
My name's Abigail, and I've always been a go-getter. For years, I poured my heart and soul into my career at a construction company. I started as a lowly intern, but through sheer determination and countless late nights, I clawed my way up to deputy director. I was overseeing the most challenging architectural marvels in the city. Skyscrapers that kissed the clouds, bridges that spanned impossible distances, and buildings that defied gravity. Each one was a testament to what I could achieve when I set my mind to it. My colleagues used to joke that I was married to my job. They weren't far off. I lived and breathed construction. My apartment was filled with blueprints and models. My weekends were spent touring building sites. And my bank account? Well, let's just say it was very healthy. But as I approached my mid-30s, something changed. I'd look at the towering structures I'd helped create and feel a sense of pride, sure. But there was also an emptiness, a void that no amount of professional success could fill. It was like a switch had been flipped. Suddenly I saw couples everywhere, holding hands in the park, pushing strollers down the street, stealing kisses in cafes. And I wanted that. I wanted it badly. But dating at 36 isn't easy, especially when you've spent the last decade focused solely on your career. I tried the apps, went on a few awkward blind dates set up by well-meaning friends. Nothing clicked. Then, at an industry conference of all places, I met Tom. He was charming, intelligent, and shared my passion for architecture. We bonded over our mutual love of Frank Lloyd Wright and our shared frustration with city zoning laws. Our relationship moved quickly. Within a year, we were married in a small ceremony surrounded by our closest friends and family. I'd never been happier. One night, as we cuddled on the couch in our cozy apartment, Tom turned to me with a glint in his eye. "Abby," he said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use, "I've been thinking, why don't we build our own house? Our dream house?" I threw my arms around him, nearly knocking him off the couch. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into designing our dream house with the same passion I'd always applied to my work projects. I enlisted the help of our company's leading architect, and together we created something truly special. We pored over every detail, from the layout to the materials. I wanted everything to be perfect. This wasn't just a house, it was our future. To fund our dream, we made the decision to sell our apartment. It was a big step, but we were both so excited about the prospect of our new home that we didn't hesitate. As construction began, I found myself spending more and more time at the site. I'd stand there, watching our plans come to life, brick by brick. It was exhilarating. "You know," Tom said one day, as we stood arm in arm, watching the framework of our house take shape, "there's still one thing missing from this picture." I looked at him, puzzled. "What's that?" He placed a hand gently on my stomach. "A little one to fill all these rooms." My heart skipped a beat. We'd talked about having children before, of course, but always in a vague, someday kind of way. But now, with our dream house becoming a reality, the idea suddenly felt very real and very right. The next 2 years were the happiest of my life. Our house was completed, and it was everything we dreamed of and more. Every room was filled with love and the promise of the family we were going to create. And then finally it happened. I still remember the moment I saw those 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test. My hands were shaking so much I could barely hold it. "Tom," I called out, my voice trembling with excitement. "Tom, come here." He rushed into the bathroom, concern etched on his face. "What is it? Are you okay?" I couldn't speak. I just held out the test. Tom let out a whoop of joy and swept me up in his arms, spinning me around the bathroom. We were both laughing and crying, overwhelmed with happiness. The next few months were a blur of doctor's appointments, nursery planning, and daydreams about our future. We decided not to find out the baby's sex, wanting it to be a surprise. At my 5-month checkup, the doctor confirmed that everything was progressing perfectly. Our baby was healthy and growing right on schedule. Tom and I left the clinic on cloud 9, already making plans for the next 4 months. The phone call came at 3:17 a.m. I remember because I glanced at the clock as I fumbled for my phone, my heart already racing with a sense of foreboding. "Mrs. Thompson," an unfamiliar voice. "I'm afraid there's been an accident." The next few hours passed in a blur. The hospital, the doctor's grim faces, the words that shattered my world. "I'm sorry, we did everything we could." Tom was gone. Just like that. A drunk driver, they said. He never stood a chance. I don't remember much of the following days. I moved through the funeral like a ghost, barely registering the sympathetic touches, the murmured condolences. Weeks passed. I couldn't bring myself to go back to work. The thought of facing those towering buildings, those grand projects that Tom and I had once marveled at together, was unbearable. My boss, Jim, came to see me at home. He sat across from me, his face etched with concern. "Abigail," he said gently, "I think it might be best if you took some time off. Permanently, if that's what you need. We're prepared to offer you a substantial severance package. You won't have to worry about money." I should have felt grateful, but I felt nothing. Just a vast, empty numbness. As the weeks turned into months, I focused all my energy on my unborn child. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, my son was born. As I held him in my arms for the first time, I felt a spark of something I thought I'd lost forever: hope. I named him Thomas, after his father. As I gazed into his tiny face, I saw echoes of Tom: the same nose, the same chin. It was both heartbreaking and healing. As Thomas grew, so did my love for him. He was a bright, curious child, always asking questions, always wanting to learn more. He excelled in school, bringing home report cards that made my heart swell with pride. As much as I loved watching Thomas thrive, I knew I needed something for myself too. So when he started school, I took a job at a small local construction firm. The salary was nothing compared to what I used to make, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that I could be home when Thomas got back from school, that I could attend his soccer games and help with his homework. We lived simply, but we were happy. Our house, once a symbol of the life Tom and I had dreamed of, became a home filled with laughter and love, and while the pain of losing Tom never fully went away, the joy of raising our son helped ease the ache. The years flew by, and before I knew it, Thomas was graduating high school. I stood in the audience, tears of pride in my eyes as I watched him accept his diploma. My little boy was all grown up. I got in. Mom, Thomas burst through the door one day, waving an acceptance letter. "I'm going to State University." My heart swelled with pride, even as it ached at the thought of him leaving. "That's wonderful, honey. I'm so proud of you." The day I dropped him off at college was one of the hardest of my life. As I helped him unpack in his dorm room, I couldn't help but think of my husband, wishing he could see the amazing young man our son had become. The house felt emptier than ever without Thomas, but I threw myself back into work, taking on more responsibilities at the construction firm. My experience and skills hadn't faded, and soon I was managing major projects again. I used my increased earnings to pay for Thomas's tuition and send him a monthly allowance. It was tight sometimes, but seeing him thrive made it all worthwhile. After graduation, Thomas decided to stay in the city where he'd gone to college. He landed a good job at a tech startup, and I couldn't have been prouder. I'd visit him most weekends, and we'd explore the city together. "Mom, you've got to try this new sushi place," he'd say, or "There's an art exhibit I think you'll love." Those weekends were precious to me, a chance to reconnect with my son and see the man he was becoming. Then, about 3 years after he graduated, Thomas called me, his voice brimming with excitement. "Mom, I've met someone. Her name's Jessica, and she's amazing." I was thrilled for him, of course. But as the weeks went by, I started to notice changes. Thomas began asking for more money, talking about expensive restaurants and designer clothes. "Mom," I was thinking, "maybe you could help me buy a car," he asked during one of our calls. "Jessica's family all drive really nice cars," and that's when alarm bells started ringing. "Thomas," I said firmly, "I love you, and I want you to be happy. But money can't buy love. If Jessica cares about you, it won't be because of expensive gifts or flashy cars." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Thomas spoke again, his voice was cold. "You just don't understand, Mom. Things are different here." After that, our calls became less frequent, our weekend visits rarer. It hurt, but I told myself it was just a phase. A year later, Thomas showed up at my door with a beautiful young woman. "Mom, this is Jessica. We're getting married." Jessica was indeed stunning, with perfectly styled hair and designer clothes. She was polite, and to my surprise, she seemed genuinely impressed by our home. "Oh my goodness," she exclaimed, her eyes wide as she took in the living room. "This house is incredible. I've never seen anything like it." She moved from room to room, marveling at the details. "The layout is so thoughtful, and the way you've maximized the natural light. It's just beautiful. And so functional, too." Thomas beamed, clearly pleased by her reaction. "We wanted to invite you to the wedding in person," he said, handing me an ornate invitation. "Jessica's parents are handling everything." As they left, I felt a mix of emotions. Jessica's admiration for the house seemed genuine, but I still couldn't shake a feeling of unease about the changes I'd seen in Thomas. The wedding was a lavish affair, more like a society event than a celebration of love. I felt out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry, acutely aware of my own simple dress. As my bank account grew, so did an idea that had been percolating in the back of my mind. I wanted to do something special for Thomas and Jessica, to show them how much they meant to me. I started sketching plans for a house, one that would combine my years of experience with everything I knew about Thomas's tastes. But I held off on starting the project, telling myself to wait for the right moment. As it turned out, I didn't have to wait long. One sunny Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. To my surprise, Thomas and Jessica were standing on my porch, looking slightly nervous. "Mom," Thomas said, "we've been thinking. You're all alone in this big house, and well, we've decided to move back to the city. We thought maybe we could live here with you." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity as I helped Thomas and Jessica settle in. At first, everything seemed perfect. We had family dinners every night, and I loved hearing about their days over morning coffee. But as the weeks wore on, things began to change. It started small, Jessica rearranging the furniture without asking, or complaining about the brands of food I bought. Then one evening, as I was preparing dinner, Jessica swept into the kitchen, her nose wrinkling. "Abigail, darling," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "don't you think it's time we upgraded our menu a bit? Perhaps some foie gras, or at least a nice vintage wine. After all, this is our home now." "Actually," I said gently, "this is still my house. I'm happy to have you both here, but—" I didn't get to finish. Jessica's face contorted with rage. "Thomas," she shrieked. "Thomas, come here. Your mother is being impossible." Thomas came running, and to my shock, he immediately took Jessica's side. "Mom, what's your problem?" he yelled. "Can't you just do this one thing for us?" From that moment on, the atmosphere in the house became unbearably tense. Thomas and Jessica barely spoke to me, whispering to each other and falling silent whenever I entered a room. Then, one evening, I overheard a conversation that chilled me to the bone. I was about to enter the living room when I heard Jessica's voice, low and insistent. "We need to get her out, Thomas. This house is wasted on her. Think of what we could do with it." I froze, unable to believe what I was hearing. But Thomas's response was even worse. He actually laughed and said, "You're right, Mom's had her time. Maybe we should start looking into nursing homes. I hear the state ones aren't too bad." I couldn't contain myself any longer. I stepped into the room, shaking with anger and hurt. "Is that really what you think of me, Thomas? After everything we've been through?" Thomas looked startled, then guilty, but as he glanced at Jessica, his expression hardened. "Mom, I think it's time you left. This is our house now." I felt as if I'd been slapped. But in that moment, a lifetime of strength and determination surged through me. I drew myself up to my full height and looked my son straight in the eye. "No, Thomas," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "This is my house. The house your father and I dreamed of. The house where I raised you, and you." I paused, my heart breaking even as I said the words. "You are no longer welcome here. Both of you, get out." Thomas and Jessica stared at me in shock, clearly not expecting this response. As they gathered their things and left, I felt a mixture of pain and relief wash over me. The door closed behind them, and I sank onto the sofa, finally allowing the tears to come. The morning after I kicked Thomas and Jessica out, my phone started ringing incessantly. I let it go to voicemail, not ready to face the fallout. But as the days passed, the messages became more frequent and more aggressive. Finally, I answered one of Thomas's calls. His voice was cold and businesslike, a far cry from my loving son. "Mom, I've been doing some research," he said without preamble. "As Dad's son, I'm entitled to inherit from him. I want half the value of the house. If you don't cooperate, I'll take legal action." I hung up, my hands shaking. How had it come to this? The son I raised, threatening to sue me. Despite having the means to pay Thomas off, the thought of rewarding his behavior made me sick. The plans I'd drawn up for their new house now felt like a mockery. I shoved them into a drawer, determined not to give them another thought. Feeling lost, I reached out to Jack, an old friend of Tom's who had become a lawyer. We met at a local cafe, and I poured out the whole sordid story. "Abigail, I'm so sorry you're going through this," Jack said, "but I can assure you, legally you're in the clear. Tom's will left everything to you, no conditions." I felt a wave of relief, quickly followed by a surge of guilt. Should I be glad that my late husband had, inadvertently, protected me from our own son? Jack must have sensed my conflicted emotions. "Look, if Thomas does decide to sue, there will be some costs involved. You'll have to go through court proceedings, which can be stressful. But based on what you've told me, he doesn't have a leg to stand on." I clung to the hope that Thomas might come to his senses yet, even as his calls became less frequent. Maybe he was realizing the error of his ways. Maybe things would get better. Then came the morning that shattered that illusion. I woke up early, as usual, and went to get the newspaper. As I opened the front door, something caught my eye. There, stuck in my perfectly manicured lawn, was a giant for sale sign. As I stood there in shock, Mrs. Henderson from next door came over, concern etched on her face. "Abigail, dear, are you moving?" I had no idea. "We'll miss you terribly in the neighborhood." I opened my mouth, then closed it again, at a loss for words. How could I explain something I didn't understand myself? More neighbors gathered, all full of questions I couldn't answer. Who was the realtor? When was the open house? Had I found a new place yet? Feeling overwhelmed, I retreated into the house and tried calling Thomas. It went straight to voicemail. I left message after message, each more desperate than the last. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I marched outside, grabbed the for sale sign, and yanked it out of the ground with all my strength. I carried it around to the back of the house and threw it behind the garden shed, out of sight. That evening I was trying to relax on the sofa, my mind still reeling from the events of the day. The house felt oppressively quiet. Suddenly the front door burst open, shattering the silence. Thomas strode in, Jessica close behind. But they weren't alone. A well-dressed couple followed them, looking around with obvious interest. "And this is the living room," Thomas was saying, his voice unnaturally bright. "Notice the vaulted ceilings and the custom fireplace." The couple nodded appreciatively. "It's stunning," the woman said. "We'd be prepared to make an offer right away." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Excuse me," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "This house is not for sale. I'm going to have to ask you all to leave immediately." Thomas turned to the couple, an apologetic smile on his face. "I'm so sorry about this. This is just crazy old lady who sometimes wanders in. Pay her no attention." I felt like I'd been slapped. "Thomas, how dare you? I'm your mother." "See what I mean?" Thomas said smoothly. "Delusional. We'll have her removed, don't worry." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely operate my phone. "I'm calling the police right now if you don't all leave." Seeing I was serious, the couple hurried out. Thomas and Jessica lingered, fury evident on their faces. "You'll regret this," Jessica hissed. "You'll never see your son again. Or your grandchildren." As they stormed out, I suddenly noticed Jessica's slightly rounded stomach. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. She was pregnant. I was going to be a grandmother, and I might never even meet my grandchild. The following weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Thomas and Jessica, backed by her parents' money, had hired a team of high-powered lawyers. They threw everything they had at me, trying to claim that Thomas had rights to the house, that I was mentally unfit, that I had promised to sign over the property. I was exhausted. My health began to suffer. Dark circles appeared under my eyes and I lost weight rapidly. Eventually, I had to quit my job. I simply couldn't concentrate on work with all this going on. One morning, as I was picking up the newspaper, checking, as always, to make sure no new for sale signs had appeared overnight, my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, approached me. "Abigail, dear," she said gently, "I hate to see you suffering like this. Have you considered going public with your story? There's a TV show that deals with family disputes. Maybe if you told your side?" I thanked her, but put the idea out of my mind, or at least I tried to. Then came the phone call that changed everything. It was Thomas, his voice dripping with disdain. "Listen, you old fool," he snarled. "You can't hold out forever. Why don't you just give up and save us all a lot of trouble?" Something in me snapped. The pain, the betrayal, the sheer injustice of it all, it was too much. The next day, I called the number Mrs. Henderson had given me. A week later, I found myself sitting under bright lights, cameras pointed at me, telling my story to a sympathetic host and a shocked studio audience. As I spoke about the house Tom and I had built, about raising Thomas, about the betrayal and the legal battles, I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. For the first time in months, I felt like someone was truly listening to me. I had no idea what the consequences of this decision would be, but as the audience murmured in sympathy and the host promised to get to the bottom of this, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the turning point I'd been praying for. A few days after my television appearance, I heard a knock at the door. I found myself face to face with Jessica's parents, looking uncomfortable and out of place on my porch. "May we come in?" Jessica's father asked, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. I nodded, bracing myself for another confrontation. But as we settled in the living room, they surprised me. "We saw you on TV," Jessica's mother began, her eyes brimming with tears. "We had no idea what Jessica and Thomas were doing. We're so sorry, Abigail." They explained how they'd spoiled Jessica, always giving in to her demands for money. When they learned about her pregnancy, they'd bought the couple an apartment, thinking it would make them happy. But Jessica was furious, her father said, shaking his head. "She said she deserved a house, not some cramped apartment. When we refused, she said she'd handle it herself. We had no idea this is what she meant." "I was going to build them a house," I admitted, pulling out my old sketches. "I had the money, the plans. But after everything that's happened, I can't reward their behavior." Jessica's parents nodded in understanding. "We've decided to cut them off financially," her father said firmly. "No more money for lawyers or anything else. It's time they learned to stand on their own 2 feet." True to their word, Jessica's parents withdrew their financial support. Without the money for high-powered lawyers, Thomas and Jessica's case crumbled. The judge ruled in my favor, affirming my sole ownership of the house. I should have felt victorious, but mostly I just felt tired and sad. Months passed. I heard through the grapevine that Jessica had given birth to a boy, my grandson. The news brought a bittersweet ache to my heart. More time went by. Occasionally I'd get desperate calls from Thomas or Jessica, begging for money. Each time I forced myself to say no, even though it broke my heart a little more. Then 2 years after that fateful TV appearance, I opened my door to find Thomas standing there. He looked terrible, thin, unkempt, with dark circles under his eyes. "Mom," he croaked, and then he broke down crying. Through his tears, Thomas poured out his heart. How he'd been selfish and stupid. How he'd let Jessica's greed infect him. How he now understood the sacrifices I'd made raising him alone. Part of me wanted to wrap him in my arms like I did when he was little, to tell him everything would be okay. But the wounds were still too fresh. "I'm not ready to forgive you, Thomas," I said gently. "You hurt me deeply. But I'd like to meet my grandson." We worked out an arrangement. Every other Saturday, Thomas would bring little Tom Jr. to visit. I'd babysit, buy him clothes and toys, and for a few hours I could pretend we were a normal, happy family. Surprisingly, it was Jessica who began to thaw first. One day, as she picked up Tom Jr., she paused. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for everything you do for him. I understand now how lucky Thomas was to have you as a mother." As for Thomas and me, we're still working on rebuilding our relationship. Some days are better than others. Sometimes when he smiles, I see glimpses of my little boy, and other times, the memory of his betrayal is too strong to bear. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive him. The trust we once had may be gone forever. But as I watch Tom Jr. playing in the garden that his grandfather and I once dreamed of, I feel a sense of peace.
My name's Sarah. I've spent the better part of my life in the delivery room, helping mothers bring new life into the world. It was more than a job, it was my calling. But when you hit 65 and your health starts to tell you to slow down, you listen. So, I stepped back from the front line and shifted gears to consulting and administration at the medical center. I've always done whatever it took to provide for my son, Alex. Being a single mom wasn't easy, but seeing him grow into the man he has become makes all the sacrifices worth it. I sent him to the best schools, got him into hockey, though it turned out that wasn't his path. He found his passion in advertising instead, and now he's doing great, working as a hotshot at some fancy agency. Currently, my big old house is all torn up for renovations, so I've moved into this little apartment temporarily. It's nothing like home, but it's got 4 walls and a roof, and that's enough for now. Today's kind of a big deal. Alex is bringing over his fiancée, Emily, for dinner. He's talked her up quite a bit, beautiful, smart, and works with him. I'm a bit nervous, truth be told. This place isn't much to look at, and I want to make a good impression. I decide to cook my famous beef stew. Just as I toss the last potato into the pot, I hear a knock. "Coming!" I shout, wiping my hands on my apron as I head to the door. There's Alex, looking as handsome as ever, and with him, a very pretty young woman, Emily. "Mom, this is Emily," Alex introduces her with a grin. "Nice to meet you, Sarah. Alex has told me so much about you," Emily says. "Please, call me Sarah. Welcome. I hope you're hungry," I say, leading them into the small dining area. I catch Emily looking around, her gaze lingering on the less than stellar furnishings. "So, Sarah, Alex mentioned you work at the hospital. What do you do there?" Emily asks as we sit down. "I handle some of the admin work," I reply casually, not wanting to dive into my past life as an obstetrician. Alex shoots me a look, surprised I didn't elaborate. I give him a quick wink, silently telling him to keep it under wraps. There's no need to brag. Emily seems a bit taken aback. "Oh, I thought maybe you were a doctor or something." The conversation moves on to lighter topics, but I can tell Emily is still sizing up everything. It's clear she expected something different. The apartment, my job, it's not adding up to her. As I serve the stew, I try to keep the atmosphere light. Here we go, my famous beef stew. It's not fancy, but it's got good, honest flavor. "It looks delicious, Sarah, thank you," Emily says, though her tone suggests she's still distracted by her earlier thoughts. We eat, making small talk about their work and plans. I notice Emily's polite, but there's a coolness there, a distance. She's hard to read, but I'm no stranger to tough nuts to crack. Once they left, I sat back down, thinking over the evening. It wasn't perfect, but it's a start. Maybe Emily needs time to see beyond the surface. I'll give her that time. For now, I'm just going to clean up and get ready for bed. The next dinner took place 2 weeks later. They arrived just as I was pulling the chicken out of the oven. Alex, ever my pride and joy, greeted me with a big hug, while Emily offered a polite smile, her eyes quickly scanning the small, somewhat worn living room. "Dinner smells great, Mom," Alex said, his cheer filling the cramped space. "Thanks, hon. I hope you're both hungry," I replied, ushering them into the dining area. As we sat down, Emily's gaze lingered on the mismatched chairs and the second-hand tablecloth. I could almost hear her thoughts ticking over. Finally, as I began to serve the food, she turned to me with a question that caught me off guard. "Sarah, I was wondering, how were you able to afford such a good education for Alex? Private school, hockey, must have been expensive, especially on a hospital administrator's salary." I paused, spoon midair, taken aback by the directness of her question. Not wanting to delve into my financial history or my past earnings as a top obstetrician, I opted for a simpler answer. Well, Emily, my parents left me a small sum. It wasn't much, but I stretched it as far as I could. Education was always a priority for us, I said, giving a slight shrug as if it were no big deal. She nodded, though her expression was pensive, almost skeptical, as she looked around the apartment again. Interesting, she murmured, more to herself than to me, her eyes scanning the modest decor. Dinner continued with light conversation, mainly driven by Alex, who seemed oblivious to the tension. After we finished eating, Emily excused herself to use the bathroom but wandered slowly, taking in every detail of the apartment. I took the moment to speak with Alex, keeping my voice low. Alex, I'd prefer if we keep the details of my financial situation and the house under wraps for now, okay? Alex laughed lightly, brushing off my concern. Mom, you worry too much. It's not like it's a secret or anything. Just humor me, son. And, please, take your time to really get to know Emily, I added, my tone more serious. Mom, I love her. She's the one, he replied confidently, his face softening as he spoke of her. I sighed, resigned that my advice might go unheeded. Just be sure, that's all I ask. When Emily returned, her demeanor had shifted slightly, now more composed, perhaps even more determined. The rest of the evening passed quickly, and soon they were ready to leave. Thank you for dinner, Sarah. It was lovely, Emily said, her voice polite but distant as she hugged me goodbye. Of course, dear. Anytime, I responded, watching them leave with a mix of emotions. After closing the door, I leaned against it, feeling a mixture of concern and frustration. Emily's questions and her obvious disappointment with my current living situation left a sour taste in my mouth. Wedding preparations were in full swing, and Alex and Emily seemed to be caught up in the whirlwind of it all. Invitations, venue bookings, menu tastings, it was a lot, and despite the tensions, I wanted to help. One afternoon, they came over to discuss some of the plans. I had made some coffee and laid out a few snacks on the kitchen table, a neutral ground of sorts. The apartment still wasn't much to look at, but I'd managed to make it feel a bit more inviting. So, we're thinking of having the ceremony outdoors, Alex started, spreading out some brochures across the table. That sounds lovely, dear. Where at? I asked, trying to keep my tone enthusiastic. There's a small vineyard on the outskirts of town. Emily fell in love with it, he replied, looking over at Emily, who nodded in confirmation. Yes, it's perfect, very picturesque, Emily added, flipping through a brochure to show me a picture of the vineyard. The place looked beautiful, no doubt about it. I can see why you like it, I said, smiling at her. It'll make for beautiful photos. Emily smiled back, briefly, before her expression turned more serious. We need to talk about the guest list, Sarah. We're trying to keep it tight, due to the venue size. Of course, that makes sense. Just let me know how many people I can invite. I don't need many, I reassured her, sensing where this might be going. Well, we were thinking, maybe if you could just stick to close family? We have a lot of friends and colleagues to accommodate, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I felt a sting at that. Was I being edged out of my own son's wedding plans? But I held back, reminding myself this was their day. That's fine, Emily. You won't have any problems from me. Thanks, Sarah. We really appreciate it. Alex chimed in, clearly relieved that I hadn't made a scene. We went on to discuss other details, flowers, music, the wedding cake. I tried to offer suggestions, but Emily had clear ideas about what she wanted. Whenever I brought up something, she had a polite but firm way of steering the conversation back to her preferences. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself speaking less and less, feeling somewhat sidelined in the planning of my only son's wedding. When they were ready to leave, I offered to help with anything they might need, trying one last time to be involved. Actually, Sarah, I think we've got it covered. But thanks, Emily said, her smile polite but distant. We'll keep you updated, of course. Of course, dear. Just happy to help, I replied, keeping my smile fixed until the door closed behind them. I washed the dishes slowly, lost in thought, wondering how things would pan out on the wedding day. Would I just be a guest at my son's wedding, watching from the sidelines? The thought weighed heavily on me as I dried the last cup and turned off the kitchen light. Alex's birthday rolled around, and this year was different because I wasn't planning the celebration. Emily took it upon herself to throw the party. Somehow, my invitation got lost in the shuffle, or so I thought. The truth hit hard when a friend casually mentioned the big bash being set up at their place. I wasn't on the guest list, a fact that stung deeply, but I put on a brave face. My son's happiness was more important than my feelings, and I decided to drop by with a gift, uninvited but hopeful. I chose a classic gift, a nice watch I knew Alex had been eyeing for months. It was more than a gift, it was a token of my ongoing love and support, regardless of the chill that had crept into our relationship lately. The bonus to the watch was a bottle of good wine. I parked down the street and walked up to their house. The sounds of laughter and music spilled out from the backyard. Taking a deep breath, I opened the gate and stepped inside. Almost immediately, I felt like I was intruding. The yard was bustling with groups of Emily's friends and her family, people I barely knew, despite the impending wedding. Emily spotted me first. Her smile was tight, the welcome even tighter. "Sarah, this is a surprise. What are you doing here?" Her tone was polite, but the undertone was clear. I wasn't expected, nor particularly wanted. "I just wanted to wish Alex a happy birthday," I said, my voice steady, despite the chilly reception. "Oh, well, he's around here somewhere," she replied, her eyes scanning the crowd, clearly reluctant to guide me to him. Navigating through the clusters of guests, I finally found Alex. His face lit up when he saw me. "Mom, you made it. I thought you were busy today." "I couldn't miss your birthday, honey," I said, handing him the gift. His genuine smile as he opened it warmed my heart for a moment. We chatted briefly, a good moment in an otherwise awkward situation. But then Emily joined us, her smile forced. "Alex, babe, we need to get ready for the toast," she said, then turned to me. Her next words were low and clear, meant only for my ears. "Sarah, maybe it's best if you don't stay long. We've got a lot planned, and well, it's a bit crowded here." Her message was unmistakable, and the undercurrent of dismissal couldn't be ignored. I looked at Alex, hoping for some support, but he was already being pulled away by a friend calling for him. I nodded, gave Alex one last smile, and left. Walking back to my car, the sounds of celebration behind me, the hurt settled in deep. It was clear Emily saw me as an outsider, and her direct approach left no room for misunderstanding. The drive home was quiet, my thoughts loud with the harsh reality of my new place in Alex's life. Once home, the silence of my apartment enveloped me. I sat down, the unopened bottle of wine I'd brought as a gift for the party now just a reminder of the evening's rejection. I poured myself a glass, the wine bitter like the evening's experience. Only 3 days left until the wedding, and I thought I had seen it all, but I was wrong. That morning, a soft knock on my apartment door signaled an unexpected visitor, Emily, alone, without Alex. "Good morning, Emily. What brings you here today?" I asked as I let her in, surprised by her solo visit. "Sarah, we need to talk. It's about the wedding," she began, her voice steady, betraying a rehearsed confidence. I led her into the small living room, gesturing towards the sofa. "Of course, dear. What about the wedding?" She sat down abruptly across from me at the kitchen table, sliding the envelope towards me. "I think it's better for everyone if you don't attend the wedding," she started, her tone firm, leaving no room for arguments. I was stunned, barely able to process her words. "Excuse me?" I finally managed to say, my voice a mix of shock and disbelief. Emily sighed, as if she was explaining something simple to a child. "Here's $3,000. I think this will make up for any inconvenience." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was she seriously trying to pay me to stay away from my own son's wedding? The audacity of it made my blood boil, but I knew I needed to handle this carefully. Quickly thinking on my feet, I pretended not to hear her properly. "What's that? You need to speak up, dear, my hearing isn't what it used to be." Emily's face contorted in annoyance, and she leaned in, speaking loudly and slowly, as if it pained her. I said, "You're a beggar, dressed tastelessly. It's embarrassing. You being there would ruin everything." Her words stung, but I needed evidence of this unbelievable interaction. While she was speaking, I discreetly turned on the dictaphone on my phone, hidden under some papers on the table. "And you should be thankful for this money," she continued, gesturing towards the envelope. "You can finally fix up this place, make it livable at least." I kept my composure, playing along. "Oh, is that right? Well, I suppose I should be grateful then." "Yes, you should," she replied, clearly relieved that I was agreeing. She pushed the envelope closer to me, eager to conclude her distasteful errand. I picked up the envelope, the crisp bills feeling like dirt in my hands. Emily stood up, smoothing her dress, looking satisfied with herself. "I'm glad you're being reasonable about this." "Oh, absolutely, dear. Thank you for your generosity," I said, my tone dripping with feigned gratitude. With a nod, Emily left my apartment, no doubt believing she had successfully bought my absence from the wedding. Once the door closed behind her, my act dropped, and the gravity of what had just occurred washed over me. I dialed Alex immediately, my fingers trembling slightly as I pressed the phone against my ear. "Alex, you need to come over now. It's urgent," I said, my voice tight with a mixture of anger and urgency. He could hear the seriousness in my tone. "I'm on my way, Mom. Hang on," he replied, and I could tell he was already grabbing his keys and heading out the door. The minutes dragged until he arrived. As soon as I heard the door swing open, I ushered him into the living room. "Alex, there's something you need to hear," I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions inside me. I handed him the phone where I'd saved the recording of my conversation with Emily. His face was a mask of confusion as he listened, his brow furrowing deeper with each passing second. When the recording ended, he looked up, shock and disbelief written all over his face. I had no idea she could say such things. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I can't believe she'd do this to you. We need to expose her, show everyone what she's really like." "But how?" I had been thinking about this ever since I turned off the recorder earlier. "I have an idea. Over the years, I've helped bring hundreds of lives into this world. Many of those families still keep in touch, respect me for the work I did. What if we gather their stories? Show everyone how much I've been a part of this community?" Alex's eyes lit up with a mix of pride and hope. "That's brilliant, Mom. We could record some testimonials from your patients, even the people you've worked with at the hospital, and the mayor. You did help his wife when she was in labor, after all." Over the next few hours, we were busy. I contacted several of my former patients who I knew would be willing to speak on my behalf. Using Skype, I recorded heartfelt messages from these women, each sharing their stories about how I had helped them during their most vulnerable moments. The head of the hospital where I worked also contributed, praising my dedication and professionalism. Even the mayor made a brief appearance in one of the videos, expressing his deep respect for me both personally and professionally. By the end of the day, we had compiled a series of powerful, personal testimonials. Alex edited them into a single video, adding photographs of me at work, with patients, and in the community, images that painted a picture of a life dedicated to service and care. That night, I went to bed feeling a mix of nerves and determination. Tomorrow would be one of the most challenging days of my life, but also, perhaps, one of the most important. The day had arrived, beautifully set for a wedding that was supposed to unite two families. The venue was beautifully decorated, flowers everywhere, guests dressed in their finest. The air was filled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation. Little did everyone know, the day was about to unfold in a way none could have predicted. As the time approached for the bride to make her grand entrance, a video was scheduled to play, a montage of Alex and Emily, their journey together leading to this day. I knew this was the moment I had prepared for, my heart heavy with the burden of what I was about to do, but firm in my resolve that it was necessary. I had the audio recording ready, the one where Emily had bluntly offered me $3,000 to not attend the wedding, to erase myself from this significant moment in my son's life. My hand trembled slightly as I switched the input from the scheduled video to the audio recording. The room went quiet, the chatter turning to silence as Emily's voice filled the hall, clear and undeniable. The shock was immediate. Murmurs spread through the room like wildfire as guests turned to look at each other, confusion and disbelief written on their faces. Just as the recording finished, Emily and her father started their walk down the aisle, unaware of what had just been played. The timing couldn't have been more poignant. Before they could reach the front, I switched to the video I had prepared, testimonials from prominent members of our community, patients I had helped during my career as an obstetrician. One by one, respected individuals spoke of their experiences with me, their words painting a picture of my life's work and dedication. The contrast between this and what Emily had tried to portray was stark. As the video played, I watched Emily's face. Confusion gave way to realization, and then to a kind of horror as she understood the enormity of her miscalculation. Her mother, sitting in the front row, burst into tears, overwhelmed by the scene unfolding before her. When the video ended, the room was thick with tension, a heavy silence hanging over us all. Then, Alex stepped up to the microphone, his face pale, but his voice steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you had to hear today. And I'm sorry for what was meant to be a joyous occasion turned into this revelation." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I cannot marry someone who has shown such disregard for my own mother, someone who sought to humiliate her in such a callous way. Therefore, I am calling off this wedding. I apologize to all of you for any distress this has caused." He then turned to me, his eyes filled with a mix of emotions. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have seen it, should have known. Thank you for everything. For your strength, your courage, and your unending love." The guests stood then, a round of applause filling the hall, not just for a ceremony, but for the truth that had been revealed, and for the respect they held for me and for Alex's brave decision. As the clapping slowly subsided, Emily fled the hall, her father trailing behind her, a broken attempt at a dignified exit. Standing there, amidst the chaos of a wedding turned upside down, I felt a surge of pride for my son. It was a hard, painful moment for him, but he had risen, shown real character. A few weeks after the incident, I heard from some colleagues that Emily had been spotted at the hospital where I work. At first, I thought it was a coincidence, maybe she was visiting someone. But then it happened again, and this time she made quite the scene. There I was, walking down the corridor, and there she was, her voice raised, causing a commotion. "You ruined my life," she yelled as I approached. "You couldn't stand to see me happy. You had to tear everything down." I stopped, shocked by her audacity. People were starting to stare, and I felt a flush of embarrassment. "Emily, this is neither the time nor the place. You need to leave," I said firmly, trying to keep my voice calm despite my racing heart. But she wasn't having any of it. "No. Everyone needs to know what you did. How you interfered and lied." Her accusations were baseless, her anger misdirected. Seeing no end to her tirade, I made a decision I never thought I'd have to. I called security, and they escorted her out. When she tried to come back a second time, I had no choice but to involve the police. They detained her briefly, warning her about the consequences of harassment. That seemed to scare her enough to stop her visits. After that, Emily disappeared from my life. Last I heard, she left the city, but I don't know where she ended up. Meanwhile, life at home finally found its peace. The renovations on my house were completed, and I moved back into my beautiful, tranquil space. The contrast between the chaos of the past and my serene home life was stark, and I appreciated my solitude and stability more than ever. 2 years slipped by quickly, and life brought happier changes. Alex, resilient and matured from his experiences, met someone new, a wonderful woman named Clara. They got married in a small, intimate ceremony, which was a joyous occasion, filled with love and genuine happiness. Clara is everything Emily wasn't: kind, respectful, and genuinely supportive of Alex and me. Now retired, I've taken to enjoying the slower pace of life. My days are filled with gardening, reading, and long walks. I've also started planning a trip around the world, something I've dreamed about for years, but never had the time or freedom to pursue. Despite the turmoil of the past, life had a way of moving forward, bringing new joys and challenges. I was ready for whatever came next, embracing each day with an open heart and an adventurous spirit. I'm Nancy Mitchell, and this is how my dream house became the centerpiece of the biggest family drama I've ever experienced. My husband Tom and I worked our butts off for years to afford our home. We're both corporate lawyers, not the fancy type you see in movies, but the kind that spend countless hours reviewing contracts and dealing with paperwork. It's not glamorous, but it pays well, and we had a clear goal in mind: our perfect house. What do you think about this one? Tom asked me one evening, showing me yet another listing on his laptop. We were sitting in our tiny apartment, surrounded by takeout containers and case files. I leaned in to look. Wait, this might be it. The house was exactly what we'd been searching for: a beautiful 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and plenty of room for the family we hoped to have someday. The moment we walked through the front door for the viewing, I knew it was meant to be ours. I can already see where everything would go, I told Tom, spinning around in what would become our living room. We could put a reading nook by that window, and the wall space would be perfect for my paintings. The next few months were a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings with contractors, and endless trips to home improvement stores. I took charge of the renovation process, much to Tom's relief. He's brilliant with legal documents, but hopeless with color schemes. I designed every room with care, choosing each paint color, light fixture, and piece of furniture deliberately. The walls of our living room and study soon displayed my own paintings, landscapes, and abstracts I'd created over the years. 3 years passed quickly in that house. We settled into a comfortable routine, hosted dinner parties for colleagues, and created countless memories. Our home became our sanctuary, especially after long days at the office. Life was good. Simple, but good. We had everything we'd worked for, and we appreciated it all the more because we'd earned it ourselves. No handouts, no family money, just hard work and careful planning. Then my phone rang one Sunday morning. Mom's name flashed across the screen. "Nancy, sweetie, I have wonderful news." Her voice was bubbling with excitement. I had no idea that this call would be the beginning of chaos. No idea that my sister Sarah's engagement would somehow turn my carefully crafted life upside down. But that's the thing about family, they have a way of complicating even the simplest things. "Can we talk about something important?" Mom asked, her voice taking on that tone she uses when she wants something. "It's about Sarah's engagement." "Nancy, honey," Mom continued, her voice getting that sugary sweet tone she uses when she wants something. "Sarah's fiancé, well, his family is quite well off." I sat down at my kitchen counter, already sensing this wasn't just a casual conversation about Sarah's engagement. "That's great, Mom. When's the wedding?" She cleared her throat. "Well, about that. Before we set the date, we need to have a formal meeting with his parents. You know, the traditional way." "Okay," I said slowly, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "The thing is," Mom paused. "Could we maybe have this meeting at your house?" I nearly dropped my coffee mug. "What?" "It's just that our apartment, you know how small it is. And with Robert's parents being so wealthy, I'm worried it might affect things." "Mom," I said firmly, "you want me to pretend my house belongs to you and Sarah?" "Just for one meeting," she pleaded. Sarah's fiancé's parents are very traditional, very focused on status. I don't want them looking down on our family. I pinched the bridge of my nose. This is wrong on so many levels. You can't start a marriage based on lies. It's not exactly a lie, Mom argued. More like a temporary arrangement. They'll be moving to Boston after the wedding anyway. We'll rarely see them, and I'll explain everything later. And what about Sarah? She's okay with this deception? Mom's voice brightened. Oh, she thinks it's a brilliant idea. Please, Nancy, do this for your sister. I paced around my kitchen, my mind racing. Let me talk to Tom. That evening, I explained everything to my husband. To my surprise, he didn't immediately shoot down the idea. It's just one meeting, he said thoughtfully. And it would mean a lot to your parents. Are you serious? I stared at him. You're actually considering this? He shrugged. Sometimes keeping peace in the family is worth a small compromise. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The meeting was set for the following Saturday. I spent the entire week cleaning and preparing, feeling increasingly uneasy about the whole situation. When the day arrived, everyone showed up right on time, my parents, Sarah and her fiancé Robert, and his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davidson. They were exactly as Mom had described, wealthy, well-mannered, and clearly used to the finer things in life. What a lovely home, Mrs. Davidson commented, admiring our living room. Before I could respond, Sarah jumped in. Thank you. I've always believed in creating a warm, welcoming space. I nearly choked on my wine. But that was just the beginning. As we gave them a tour, Sarah played the perfect hostess, discussing her decorating choices and future renovation plans. Then came the moment that made my blood boil. And this is my sister Nancy and her husband Tom, Sarah said casually, gesturing toward us. They've been staying with us for a while. You know how hard it is for young couples just starting out. I felt Tom's hand squeeze my arm, warning me to stay quiet. But watching my sister stand there, playing Lady of the Manor while describing us as charity cases she'd taken in out of the kindness of her heart, it took every ounce of self-control not to speak up. The dinner was going surprisingly well, despite my growing discomfort with Sarah's performance as lady of the house. Tom kept shooting me sympathetic glances across the table as we finished our dessert. I thought we were almost in the clear when Sarah suddenly sat up straighter, her eyes sparkling with what I recognized as her brilliant idea. Look. You know, she announced, setting down her wine glass with a flourish, instead of renting some impersonal venue, we should have the wedding right here. I inhaled sharply, my fork clattering against my plate. My eyes shot to Mom, who was making frantic, stay quiet gestures while trying to maintain her smile. Actually, I managed to say, keeping my voice steady, I don't think that's the best idea. The layout isn't really suited for a wedding reception. The cleanup alone would be. Oh, don't be silly, Sarah cut me off with a wave of her hand. It won't be that many people. Just family and close friends. Still, I persisted, there's the parking situation, and the neighbors to consider. A proper venue would be much more. Robert's parents are giving us a honeymoon trip to the Maldives, Sarah interrupted again, beaming at the Davidsons. We'll leave right after the reception, so we won't even be here for the cleanup. Great. So not only did she want to commandeer my house, but she was planning to leave the mess for me too. Mrs. Davidson looked around appreciatively. It really is a beautiful space for a wedding. So much character. And it would save quite a bit on venue costs, Sarah added, giving Robert's parents her most winning smile. We could put that money toward other aspects of the celebration. I watched in horror as the Davidsons nodded approvingly. My house was being volunteered for a wedding venue, and I couldn't even object without exposing the whole charade. Then Mrs. Davidson noticed one of my landscape paintings above the fireplace. Oh, what a gorgeous piece! The light is captured so beautifully. Who's the artist? Before I could open my mouth, Sarah jumped in. Actually, I painted that. I've been painting since I was little. I felt the blood drain from my face. That painting had taken me months to complete. It was from our trip to Maine last summer, a sunrise over the coast that I'd worked on meticulously to get just right. You're so talented. Mrs. Davidson exclaimed. Would you consider painting something for me? Perhaps a seascape? I've always loved ocean views. Of course, Sarah agreed enthusiastically. Consider it my wedding gift to you. I'll have it ready before the big day. I gripped my napkin under the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Tom's hand found my knee and squeezed it gently, but even his touch couldn't calm the rage building inside me. Have you completely lost your mind? I exploded as soon as the Davidsons' car pulled away. A wedding? In my house? And now you're claiming my paintings are yours? Sarah's bottom lip trembled in that practiced way she's perfected since childhood. Nancy, please. It's just for one day. You heard them, they love the house. Because they think it's yours, I shot back. This whole thing has gone way too far. Mom stepped between us. Nancy, sweetie, try to understand. We can't afford to rent a proper venue, but we've already promised the Davidsons we'd contribute to the wedding. That's not my problem. I turned to Dad, hoping for support, but he just stood there looking uncomfortable. Please, Nancy, Sarah begged. It'll only be a few hours. Just family and close friends, I promise. Maybe 50 people, tops. I shook my head firmly. No, absolutely not. That's when Sarah changed tactics, turning to Tom with her best puppy dog eyes. Tom, you understand, don't you? You've always been like a brother to me. I watched in disbelief as my husband's resolve crumbled. Well, he said hesitantly, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Just one afternoon. Tom, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I'll make it up to you, he whispered, but the damage was done. Sarah's face lit up with triumph. Oh, and Nancy, don't forget about the seascape for Mrs. Davidson. That can be your wedding gift to me. I stood there, mouth agape, as she practically skipped out the door. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of Sarah's reign of terror. Over the next few weeks, she treated my house like her personal photo studio. Every day brought new social media posts, getting ready for my big day in my dream home, or can't wait to say I do in this gorgeous space. Then came the day before the wedding. I was working in my home office when the front door burst open. The decorating team is here, Sarah announced, leading in a woman laden with bags and boxes. Before I could protest, they were hammering nails into my carefully painted walls, draping gauzy fabric across my windows, and rearranging my furniture. Stop, I cried as they started hanging fairy lights from my vintage chandelier. You can't just. Oh, relax, Sarah rolled her eyes. I'll fix any damage after the wedding. Stop being so uptight. Uptight? I watched in horror as they pushed my antique reading chair into a corner to make room for what appeared to be a flower arch. This is my house. It's just for one day, Sarah said dismissively, directing the decorator to hang more tulle from my staircase. Everything needs to be perfect for the photos. Crash. The sound of shattering ceramic made my heart stop. The blue and white vase, a piece I'd found at an antique market in Providence, lay in pieces near the fireplace. Oops, Sarah said, barely glancing at the fragments. We'll get you a new one. That vase was one of a kind. My voice shook with anger. God, Nancy, it's just a stupid vase. Stop being so materialistic. Sarah rolled her eyes and then suddenly brightened. Oh, we need to prepare the bedroom. Before I could stop her, she was charging up the stairs. I followed, horrified, as she burst into my bedroom where Tom was still sleeping after his night shift. Up and at him, she chirped, yanking open the curtains. Tom jolted awake, confused and squinting. What's going on? Sarah tossed a package of new bedding at me. Here, put these on. I got the highest thread count they had, perfect for a wedding night. Wedding night? I sputtered. In our bedroom? Well, duh. It's the master bedroom. Sarah was already rummaging through my closet, pulling out pillows. We'll need to move these, maybe add some rose petals, ooh, and some romantic lighting. Where exactly do you expect us to sleep? I demanded. She shrugged, not even turning around. There's a Motel 6 off the highway. Or you could crash at Mom and Dad's. I looked at Tom, who was sitting up in bed, his guilt-ridden expression matching his bed head. This was all his fault for giving in to her demands. Sarah, he started, clearly trying to backpedal, maybe we should. Oh. She spun around suddenly. Nancy, where's the seascape? Mrs. Davidson asked about it yesterday. She's so excited to see it at the wedding. The absolute audacity of this woman. My sister. Standing in my bedroom, planning to kick us out of our own house, and now demanding artwork I never agreed to create. There is no seascape, I said coldly. And there never will be. Sarah's face froze. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not painting anything. In fact, there won't be any wedding here tomorrow. You can't do that. Sarah's voice rose to a shriek. Watch me. This is my house, and I'm done with this charade. Sarah's face turned an alarming shade of red. She yanked her phone from her pocket and stabbed at the screen. Mom, she wailed into the phone. Nancy's ruining everything. She says we can't have the wedding here anymore. Nancy, are you there? Mom's voice crackled through Sarah's phone speaker. What's all this fuss about? The wedding's practically here. Just take a little trip to the mountains with Tom for the weekend. You two could use a romantic getaway. Something in my brain short-circuited. Wait, what do you mean, take a trip? Aren't we invited to the wedding? The silence on the other end was deafening. Well, Mom hesitated. It's a very intimate ceremony. We need to focus on impressing Robert's family, and... Are you telling me, I said slowly, my voice rising, that I'm not even invited to my sister's wedding? A wedding that's happening in my own house? Sarah rolled her eyes dramatically. Don't be so dramatic, Nancy. It's not like you're the most important person there. Robert's aunt is flying in from Switzerland, and his parents' friends are all very influential people. Your sister's right, Mom chimed in through the phone. We need to prioritize the guest list, and well, you understand, don't you? Tom, who had been quietly listening, suddenly stood up. This is absolutely ridiculous. You can't kick us out of our own house and not even invite us to the wedding. I looked at my husband's outraged face, at my entitled sister, at the mess they'd made of my bedroom. And suddenly, something clicked in my mind. A plan started forming. You know what? I said, my voice surprisingly calm. You're right, I'm being silly about all this. Sarah's face lit up with surprise and triumph. Really? Finally, you're being reasonable. Yes, I smiled sweetly. You go ahead and finish decorating. Tom and I will head to the mountains for a romantic weekend. I caught Tom's confused look and gave him a subtle wink. His eyes widened slightly, but he played along. Here, I said, handing Sarah my house keys. Just make sure everything's cleaned up after. Of course, Sarah beamed, pocketing the keys. See? I knew you'd come around eventually. She and the decorator spent another hour putting final touches on their wedding wonderland, while Tom and I quietly packed overnight bags. When they finally left, Sarah was practically skipping with satisfaction. As soon as we got in our car, Tom turned to me. Okay, what are you planning? Because I know that look, and that wasn't surrender back there. I started the engine, a small smile playing on my lips. Just trust me, honey. Sometimes you have to let people think they've won, to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. By this time tomorrow, everyone will understand exactly whose house they've been taking for granted. As we headed toward the mountains, I couldn't help but feel a little thrill of anticipation. Sarah thought she had won, but she had no idea what was coming. Sometimes being a lawyer has its advantages, especially when it comes to understanding property rights and security systems. The morning sun was streaming through our hotel room window when my phone rang. The security company's number flashed on the screen. Mrs. Mitchell? This is Derek from Home Shield Security. We've detected an entry alarm at your residence. The patrol is en route now. Thank you for letting me know, I replied, unable to suppress my smile. Please keep me updated. Tom looked up from his coffee. It's starting, isn't it? Before I could answer, my phone erupted again. This time it was Mom. Nancy, she screamed into the phone. What is the meaning of this? There are security guards here. The alarm won't stop. You need to call them right now and tell them you gave us permission to be here. Did I? I asked innocently. I don't recall giving anyone permission to use my house today. But you gave Sarah the keys. I gave Sarah keys, yes. That doesn't mean I gave permission for a wedding party to enter my private property. The security company called again while Mom was still spluttering. Mrs. Mitchell, we have a situation here. There's a group of people claiming they have permission to use the house for a wedding. They have keys, but no documentation. We need your confirmation. I absolutely did not give permission for anyone to use my house today, I said firmly. In fact, I'm quite concerned about this unauthorized entry. I could hear the chaos unfolding through the phone, Sarah's hysterical crying, guests murmuring in confusion, and the guard's professional but firm voice requesting everyone to step outside. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, Mrs. Davidson's voice, sharp with dawning realization. What do you mean this isn't your house? Ma'am, the security guard explained, this property belongs to Nancy and Thomas Mitchell. Without their explicit permission or presence, this gathering constitutes unauthorized entry. Sarah, Robert's voice cut through the commotion, you lied to my family? About owning this house? I can explain, Sarah wailed. Everyone will need to come down to the station to sort this out, another voice announced. Police had arrived. The next few hours were a parade of phone calls. The police confirming my statement that no, I hadn't authorized a wedding in my house. The security company updating me on the situation. And finally, a call from a very subdued mom. Your sister's been released with a warning, she said quietly. But, Robert, he called off the wedding. Said he couldn't marry someone who would build their relationship on lies. His parents are furious. They're calling us social climbers and frauds. I let that sink in for a moment. Well, aren't they right? Actions have consequences. Maybe Sarah learned something from this. After hanging up, I turned to Tom, who had been listening to my side of the conversations with growing amazement. You planned this all along, didn't you? He asked. From the moment you handed over those keys? Let's just say I knew exactly what would happen when they tried to enter a house with a state-of-the-art security system they didn't know existed. Tom shook his head, but he was smiling. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Tom and I returned home the next morning to find our house looking like an abandoned theater set. Tulle and fairy lights hung limply from the walls, wilting flowers scattered across the floor, and chairs arranged in neat rows for a ceremony that never happened. We spent the morning restoring our home to its former state, working in comfortable silence. Each decoration we removed felt like reclaiming a piece of our sanctuary. When we finally collapsed onto our couch, now back in its proper place, someone knocked at the door. It was Mom and Dad, looking like they'd aged 10 years overnight. How could you do this to your sister? Mom burst out before I could even invite them in. Do you have any idea how humiliated we all were? How could I? I repeated incredulously. How could you? You tried to steal my house for a wedding I wasn't even invited to. Dad stepped forward, his face stern. We've been talking, and if you don't apologize to your sister and make this right, you can forget about any inheritance. The family cabin, your grandmother's jewelry, all of it will go to Sarah. To their surprise, I laughed. A real, genuine laugh that felt like releasing years of pent-up frustration. Keep it, I said, gesturing around me. Everything in this house, everything Tom and I have, we earned ourselves. We don't need your inheritance, and we definitely don't need your approval of how we defend our home and our dignity. You've always been selfish, Mom spat. Always thinking you're better than everyone else with your fancy job and your big house. No, Mom. I just respect myself enough not to let people walk all over me, even family. Especially family. Then you're no longer part of this family, Dad declared. Don't call us, don't visit. You're no longer our daughter. They turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind them. The sound echoed through the house, but strangely, I felt no pain, only relief. Tom wrapped his arms around me. Are you okay? I leaned into his embrace. I meant what I said. We built this life together, honestly, and through hard work. No deception, no using people, no shortcuts. Sarah might have lost a fiancé, Tom mused, but maybe she gained a valuable lesson. I hope so. You can't build happiness on lies, whether it's a marriage or a family relationship. It all comes crumbling down eventually. We stood there in our restored living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together. On the walls, my paintings, my real paintings, caught the afternoon light. The furniture was back where it belonged. Everything was in its right place. You were right, you know, Tom said softly. The most important thing in a family is mutual respect. I nodded, thinking about the true meaning of family, not the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build, based on love, trust, and respect.